November 14th, 2017 meeting of the Planning Commission of Corte Madera. We are starting a half hour earlier than normal. We normally start at 7, so don't show up at 6:30 next time. So please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Metcalf?
Here.
Commissioner Bundy?
Here.
Commissioner Chase?
Here.
Commissioner Friedman?
Here.
Commissioner Lee? Here.
Thank you. At this point in all of our meetings, we open up the microphone to anyone who has a public comment on something other than what is on the agenda. So if you've got something you'd like to say to the Planning Commission, please step up and say that if it's something other than what is on the agenda. I don't see any risers, so we will close that section. So tonight, everybody knows why we're here, but I'll say it formally. So this is a new public hearing on the Village at Corte Madera Restoration Hardware Expansion Project. Consideration and possible Planning Commission recommendation to the Corte Madera Town Council regarding certification of a final environmental impact report and approval of 1, a general plan amendment, 2, rezoning, 3, preliminary plan amendment, 4th, a precise plan amendment, 5, a design review, 6, a conditional use permit, and 7, development agreement to facilitate the Village at Corte Madera expansion project, including a new 46,000 square foot retail store and cafe for Restoration Hardware and modifications to the town's gravel lot. So that said, it's a lot. First off, we're going to have a slightly different format for tonight's meeting than we normally do. We usually have a staff presentation and then the applicant presentation. We ask questions of the public, or of the applicant and staff, and then we go into public comment. We have so much to intake with this that we're going to get to public comment earlier than we might if we laid out the entirety of the presentation initially. So with that said, we're going to get 2 sections of public comment, one earlier in the evening and one later on the gravel lot. So we would like to comment on the first part of the presentation about the building and then later on the gravel lot. So essentially we're going to have staff present the project, talk about the process and the EIR. Then Restoration Hardware will make a presentation with a staff report. And we will take public comment after that if we get to the right time break. And then after public comment, we will go into the gravel lot. Tonight, we would like to get this meeting ended by 10:30. We will take a vote and see if we go to 11 o'clock. At 10:30, or 10 o'clock, we will take that vote for 10:30, and that's a simple majority of the commission to get it at 10:30, and after 10:30, we have to have a total approval of everyone to go to 11 o'clock. So we will have some breaks in here, so you needn't worry about that. We will break it up probably into 3 different sections if we can get through all of it. So I would just like to ask the other members of the commission if you have met with Restoration Hardware or Macerich prior to this hearing tonight. Phyllis?
Yes, I have met with both.
Dr. Bundy?
Yes, I've met with both. I've also discussed this before being on the council and afterwards, I believe, with Barbara Salzman of Audubon and Maureen Gaffney of the Bay Trail.
All right, thank you. Jennifer?
Yes, I met with both Macerich and with Restoration Hardware.
All right. Charles?
I have not, but I did visit the site. And
All right. Has everyone else seen the polls out there?
Yes.
Okay, great. So with that said, I think we've prefaced this enough to let Mr. Boyle take it over and start his staff presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Chase, members of the Planning Commission, and Corte Maderians, and applicants, and other consultants. I'd like to start out by just pointing out the items that are on the back table. We have quite a few documents. Some of them are just there for viewing tonight. The larger documents, if you'd like one, please just give me your name and phone number, and I can get you a copy of the larger documents. The draft environmental impact report, the final environmental impact report, project description, the project plans, and so on are all on the back table. All documents are also and have been on the town's website for quite some time. The only thing that is not are comments that were received yesterday after 4 p.m. And those comments, however, have been printed out for the Planning Commission and also are printed out in the back. So those are the only things that aren't on the website. And I'm sure we'll be adding things to the website on a daily basis. So again, thank you, Peter, for that introduction in terms of how the meeting is going to run. I wanted to first start out again by thanking fellow staff members for this project. This has been a 2-year endeavor. I want to thank the applicant team, both Restoration Hardware and Macerich, and our consulting team, mainly GHD and Fair and Peers, but also many other consultants worked on this project, mainly on the environmental impact report. So with that, I will start out with a project overview. I'm sure a majority of people in the room know where the project is located. It's located at the village at Corte Madera, east side of Highway 101, with the marshlands to the east of the project, and marshlands to the north, as well as the gravel lot, and commercial uses to the south. So to the right is to the left of me is the vicinity map. To the right is the project site map as it looks today, with a shown area where the proposed building is to be. In terms of overall project size and the size of the village in terms of square footage, back in 2009, when the town, our current general plan, allowed for a floor area of approximately 600,000 square feet. Total existing at this point is approximately 470,000 square feet. If this project is built, which is proposed to be approximately 4,600 square feet, the remaining area that is allowed under the current general plan is roughly 130,000 square feet. So it just gives you a ballpark of how the general plan has looked at this site since 2009, and how, if this proposal is moved forward, how it would affect in terms of total square footage. Uh-oh. Okay. So I'm going to break this into two brief presentations. First, dealing with the RH Gallery, or the store, and then I'll briefly talk about the gravel lot, and then go into some of the processes that we've gone through to date. So the RH Gallery is proposed to be a retail store and cafe of approximately 46,000 square feet. It will be located just, as you saw on the map, east of the existing village in what's called the east entry to the village. The gravel lot itself is proposed to be resurfaced and modified and to accommodate 452 parking spaces. And of those parking spaces, 407 will be standard and 45 will be compact. That's approximately 10%. Town code allows as much as 30% compact spaces. And I'll talk more in detail on the gravel lot as we move forward. Again, overall parking summary. Parking is a big issue. This is in the staff report as well. This is an overall summary of the parking situation. Quite a lot of numbers, but I'll really focus on several. One is the current number of parking space spaces in the village right now, 1,781. The number of spaces that will be created by the gravel lot, and number of spaces taken away through modifications of the parking lot, and so on. Jumping down to the conclusion is that if this project is constructed as proposed, there will be a total of 2,067 parking spaces on the village property and on the new revised gravel lot. The code requires them to have 1,931 spaces, so they will exceed the Corte Madera Municipal Code by 136 spaces. So that's the summary of the parking. The application process, this all began back in June of 2015. Guess we're looking at about a year, 2.5 years. We went through a public process before the town council. We interviewed several consultants, and we hired GHD to do the environmental impact report and the SEQA documents. That was in October. At that point, also, the town began having discussions with the applicants regarding the use of the gravel lot. I'm going to use the term applicants most of the time, referring to both Macerich and Restoration Hardware. Sometimes both applicants are involved in conversations. Sometimes it's just one. I'll try to delineate when needed. The scope of the EIR was presented to the public. A notice of preparation was put out, and a public meeting was held. Citizens were allowed to come and review the scope of the EIR, the contents of the EIR, and provide suggestions on how they would like that document to change. The scope was changed based upon some of those public comments. In December of 2016, the applicant actually revised their project based upon response they have gotten from the public, and they'll probably touch upon that in their presentation. Also, just early this year, the council began or endorsed a term sheet for the gravel lot. Moving on, in August of this year, we had a public meeting to review the draft environmental impact report. That was during the middle of the comment period. So there's a comment period for the environmental impact report in which citizens, agencies, whoever wanted to, could make comments on the document. The town reviewed and made a final determination. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. And then currently, presently today, we are at November 14th, application before the Planning Commission. The charge of the Planning Commission is to review all of the documents, and when they're ready to make a recommendation to the town council will be the final decision maker on this project. I did want to point out the extensive amount of public notices and public meetings that we've had through the 2.5 years. Notices and meetings have been distributed on the town website, direct mail, Marin Independent Journal, Nextdoor, the town reader board, which I understand is under construction as we speak, and also town emails for individuals who signed up for this particular project as well as just projects in general. In total, we've had seven public meetings to date on this project. So the number of entitlements requested that Chairman Chase read off, breaking them into the different sections. The gravel lot, they're requesting a general plan amendment and a rezoning, as well as the development agreement. The Restoration Hardware Gallery is seeking a conditional use permit for the cafe. Cafes with that require conditional use permits as well as restaurants. And the gallery and the gravel lot are both seeking to amend the preliminary plan and the precise plans, which includes design review findings and discussions. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Christine Gaspar. She is the project manager from GHD who did the environmental impact report.
Good evening, commissioners. That was one of my favorite pens. I'll get it later, it's okay. It's okay. So just, I didn't do it. No. There we go. Environmental impact reports. Okay, so the EIR has been prepared in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act. The purpose of the EIR is an informational document to provide decision makers with enough details about the environmental impacts of a proposed project so that you can make a determination as to the effects. It also provides mitigation measures where impacts are identified and also looks at alternatives to the project. There were a number of impacts that were identified in the draft EIR. All of the impacts were found to be less than significant with the implementation of mitigation measures, so there's no significant unavoidable impacts. And then the final EIR is really just the response to all the comments that were received when the draft EIR circulated. There were 15 letters and 6 people spoke at the public meeting on the draft EIR. And all responses to all the comments were made in the final EIR. And the other thing the final EIR does, it sometimes makes revisions to the draft EIR. So there was a couple of tweaks in transportation from comments made by Caltrans. They thought some of our tables could be labeled better. We agreed and made those changes. And then there was also some changes to the impacts. There was an error found in the traffic model, and the impacts that were identified in the draft EIR were actually reduced. There were additional intersections identified as having impacts that actually didn't have impacts. So that is corrected in the final EIR. And I think that's it. Do I turn it back over to you?
And just a note, I just want to note, obviously, staff, including our consultant team, will be available to answer all your questions and come back up to the podium and speak to those questions at a later time in this presentation. So, go ahead.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Adam. Yes, I also wanted to point out, as well as the many documents in the table, in the back, number of attachments to the staff report, approximately exactly 14, dealing with all the different, some of the history of the gravel lot, some of the history of the village at Corte Madera, previous staff reports, previous resolutions. So a wealth of information in the attachments as well. So further, so now we'd like to move on to the section dealing with the Restoration Hardware Gallery building itself in a little bit more detail. And again, the applicant will present some of this also. We'll probably go in more detail than myself. Restoration Hardware Building, again, is a retail store and cafe, approximately 46,000 square feet. We'll have 3 levels with a maximum height of 46 feet. The cafe and retail will be on the ground level, and retail on the second, and then a rooftop loft on the 3rd level. There are also, part of this discussion as well is the parking lot modifications. And so again, the building in terms of entitlements is seeking precise plan amendment, preliminary plan amendment, and design review, and again, the conditional use permit for the cafe. Just showing some various images of the different elevations. This is the west elevation, the one kind of looking into the center courtyard of the village. To the right of this picture above me is the Gap, and to the left is the former Banana Republic building. The east elevation, again, one looking from perhaps maybe mid parking lot to the west, and the other one is obviously a rendering from the project set of plans. Majority of these images are from the plan set by the applicant. Some are from the environmental impact report. I did want to point out the colors and materials that are next to Commissioner Metcalf, various exterior materials, fabrics that the applicant is proposing, siding, and window materials. These are elevations showing the north and south elevations. Again, showing how the building kind of steps in and provides some relief and not just straight walls. In terms of visual simulations, there was an extensive aesthetics chapter in the draft environmental impact report. We looked at the visual impacts of the project. And so this was done by the consultant. Image on your left is an older photograph when the tower was still there. And then on the right is the proposed building. And this is taken from across, obviously, across the parking lot and across Redwood Highway, and also across the strip of waterway that runs parallel to Redwood Highway. Just in terms of kind of a sense of scale, Nordstrom's, their top of their air conditioning screening is 46 feet. The Gap is approximately 34 feet. Former Banana Republic is 34 feet. Our old beloved tower was 55 feet, and the proposed building is 46. Another part of the application for this is to modify the east entry, or the area between the new building and the existing Gap and former Banana Republic. This plaza will be modified and enhanced to be more of a public space. It will create drop-off and pickup areas, not just on the west side, which exists today, but also on the east side of this drive aisle, as well as additional landscaping. So that's what's called the east entry modifications. In terms of parking, in terms of the parking lot, the existing parking lot, a number of changes are taking place with the installation of this building. Obviously, putting the building down itself, that's going to take up 195 spaces. The net loss in terms of restriping some of the spaces, there's going to be 7 spaces lost in doing that, and that's shown in this this one circle here. The two outer circles are depicting added parking that will be created by infilling drive aisles and other modifications. So actually 36 additional spaces will be added. And so with all these changes, adding the building, changing the parking lot, there's a net loss of parking spaces in this part of the parking lot of 166 spaces. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Bob Grundy from Fair & Peers, and they're the consultant who did the transportation analysis.
And just quickly before we get there, I did want to point out that the applicant, we did ask, and the applicant did put together a model showing, I think that is very helpful in sort of understanding the relative massing and the context of the proposed building in relation to the rest of the existing center. So obviously that's in front of you, and maybe when we break, if others from the public want to come up and take a look, they're welcome to do so as well. And as part of this restriping, actually what was going on there in terms of losing the 7 spaces, they were taking some 7.5 foot wide spaces, which were compact under the original approvals, and making those into 8.5 foot wide spaces. So that's why that restriping resulted in a loss of spaces.
Great, thank you. Please.
Good evening. Bob Grandy with Fair & Peers. I'm joined by my colleague Matthew Crane. So I'm going to, in 2 slides in just a few minutes, I'm going to give an overview of the comprehensive amount of traffic data that we collected and evaluated for the EIR. The figure on the right shows the study intersections. We evaluated 14 intersections on both sides of the freeway. we evaluated 2 different time periods. And in order to determine which were the time periods where we have the highest amount of traffic, we collected daily counts on the roadways around the project. And we looked for both a weekday and weekend Saturday. So we looked at a number of different hours over those 2 days, weekdays and Saturdays, added project trips to existing conditions with a particular focus on Tamalpais and Doherty, Lucky Doherty, and the trips that would be going west of Tama Vista. And we determined that the 2 highest periods when we added the project trips would be in the evening, a weekday evening between 4 and 5 p.m., and also on a weekday between 3 and 4 when the schools are letting out. So those were the 2 highest periods. Those are the periods we evaluated in the EIR. Those were both actually higher than a Saturday conditions that we evaluated. In addition to that, we collected counts at all of the village driveways. That provided information for our trip generation analysis. So that gave us a good idea of how many trips were being generated by the existing center and what the addition of the 46,000 square foot building would add in terms of vehicle trips. We evaluated, in addition to those 14 intersections, 3 road segments, 8 freeway segments on 101. We also looked at bicycle, pedestrian, and transit network analysis as well. And the primary impacts and mitigations that we identified from a traffic perspective that are identified here. From a construction standpoint, there are mitigations related in the document related to having the detailed construction traffic control plan prepared, which would identify when the duration of construction, when construction vehicles will be entering and exiting, the hours of operation, and all of those things would have to be approved by the city. So there's a construction traffic management plan. There's a parking management plan during construction, so that that would key up to the sequencing of all of the construction, and it would identify any mitigations that are necessary from a parking perspective during construction, based on the staging of the building and the construction of the gravel lot. There's also a mitigation requiring that the Bay Trail be open at all times to facilitate or to maintain that access along the east side of Redwood Highway. So those are the construction-related mitigations. In terms of traffic operations, we did not see an existing plus project impact, but we did see a cumulative plus project impact. The general plan, as was mentioned earlier, forecasts about 185,000 square feet of expansion space at the village. 17,000 square feet's already occurred with this project. Another 46,000, that would be a third, would occur, and 2/3 yet to occur. The impact that we identified is at Tamalpais San Clemente Redwood intersection. That's consistent with the impact identified in the general plan related to the expansion. And the mitigation that we've identified is also comparable to that mitigation identified in the general plan. And the requirement is for the project to make a fair share contribution towards those improvements. And that's 23% of the cost of widening that intersection. So that's a brief overview. Happy to answer any questions later on.
I do have one question for you right now, if I might ask, before you leave, very quickly. Your report says June 2017, revised October 2017. Did you redo the counts in October for all of those intersections?
No.
Okay.
That was just an update to respond to the comments that had come in throughout the course
Okay.
of the review of the draft EIR.
All right.
So we wanted so that you had a final document which reflected all of responses.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks. Thank you, Bob. Moving ahead. Notes. So actually, with that, our next segment is the applicant's presentation of the gallery building. I thought that our previous thought was to have staff presentation, consultant presentation, and then applicant's presentation, and then if it's the wish of the commission, to have questions at that point.
Well, let me just ask at this point if anybody else has any questions for staff before we dive into the applicant's proposal.
No.
No?
No.
All right. No. All right, then. Look forward to this. Please, is it Rob or who's going to stand up and make the presentation?
John Carlo will go first.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Giancarlo Filartiga, and I am Vice President of Development for Macerich, the owners of the village of Corte Madera. Great to see so many people here. Rarely do we get a planning commission in our projects. So many people attend. It's great that the community is so involved in this project. I just came back from a vacation in South America, first vacation in years, and the people there, one of my native languages is Spanish, and many back there, after many years of not being back, couldn't understand a thing I was saying. So, if you have a hard time, please ask. I will repeat what I said. I'm not trying to confuse you. We've been reading, of course, we've been keeping a hand on the pulse of what the community thinks and how the community sees this project. And some of the questions that seem to have arisen is regarding first of all, the shopping center industry and what's happening. There's a lot of headlines talking about the demise of a shopping mall. Recently, I was just in a panel at California State University, Dominguez Hill, and the focus of that panel was how the digital sales are changing shopping centers. I was in another panel recently where their interest was more what's happening with department stores, how is the industry can survive, etc. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, and hopefully that will answer some of the questions that you have. But first of all, as I said, I'm Vice President of Development for Macerich. Macerich is a public company. We own 48 properties throughout major markets in the U.S. And to put the retail industry or the shopping center industry in perspective, because many of you may not know, there are about 116,000 shopping centers in the U.S. And by shopping centers, they really mean all types of retail just consolidated into a parcel. Out of those, 595 are what we call regional malls. In all the United States, there are 595. 600, an additional 600 are what they call super regional malls. So if we add those up, there's about 1,200 malls in the U.S. In addition, there are about 370 outlet centers and about 500 lifestyle centers. It all gets very confusing, but it's mainly divided by the type of offering and by the size of a project. So I'm not sure if the Village of Corte Madera is lifestyle or regional mall, but it certainly would fit within those two categories. About 7 years ago, our company that now owns 48 centers own a lot more centers. We own 20 additional assets, and in the last 7 years, we disposed of those 20 assets, and we reinvested the funds into our performing centers. And that's one of the things that set us apart in the industry is that we continuously invest in our properties because one of the essence of retail is that we have to continually reinvest, and have a current offering for the public to continue to come and shop at our properties. We have, in particular to the village at Corte Madera, out of all of our 48 properties, Corte Madera, the village is in the top tier of all our properties. So I have read some of the comments. I said, well, none of the retailers are profitable. Only Apple is successful. That's not true. This is one of the best centers, not only in our portfolio, but in the country. And the way to keep it relevant and the way to maintain that is by keep bringing the best tenants, by keep reinvesting in our center and keeping it current. And that's what we continuously try to do with our portfolio. It's interesting, some people, like I said in some of the other panels, said, well, we see web retailing, online retailing. It's growing at a pace of 16% a year. It's crazy. Nobody's going to need shopping malls anymore. And if you look at the whole industry, all retail sales in the U.S., which are trillions of dollars, currently, as of 2016, I should say, only 8.2% of all commerce is through online, and that includes all types of online apps, cellular, internet. 16% is a great rate of growth, but starting next year, the experts anticipate that online growth is going to start slowing down to 15%, and we believe that 8.2% share of all retail sales is probably going to stabilize at about 15 to 20%. So, which means that of all retail in the U.S., 80% or so, if we believe the experts, is still going to happen at physical stores. And why is that? We believe that people still have a great need to gather, to socialize, to see, to touch, to feel. And one of the trends that we have been seeing in our industry, and you have to understand that with trends, some are opposite one to each other. Sometimes one trend goes one way, the other one, and other trends go the opposite way. But one of the things that we're seeing is that there is less traffic to shopping centers, that's true, but we're seeing higher spending per visit, and we're seeing what we call conversion rates, and they're spending more money when they come to the malls. We don't believe that malls are dying. We believe that perhaps there are too many malls in the U.S. right now, and we like using a term named pruning. Pruning meaning that we believe that the non-performing centers are going to slowly become less relevant and perhaps die and be readapted and develop as something else. Certainly, we don't believe that's the case with the village. But in order for the village to keep being relevant, we believe that we need to keep investing, and we believe that we need to keep bringing tenants such as Restoration Hardware. On trends on retail, there are many different trends. We know we're seeing the department stores being challenged, and that's putting everybody in one big group. There are some department stores that are doing less well than others. Nordstrom's, for instance, that is here at the center, they invested in their expansion, and is one of the top performing department stores in the country. Is doing very well. There are certainly not only department stores that have struggled or are struggling. There are also specialty tenants that are struggling, and the main reason is because we believe they have failed to adapt to the new reality. There are other retailers that are doing very well, and there are stores that believe that the way to succeed is with new flagship locations. And we have examples of Tesla, for instance, Zara, Lululemon, Victoria's Secret, that are Apple, that are certainly going for that flagship store that becomes a destination and becomes an experiential opportunity. And we believe that Restoration Hardware is one of those. Not only are they based right here in Corte Madera, but we believe that is a terrific story. Who wouldn't want to spend time drinking wine, sipping wine at the store, or spending time at the rooftop, at the loft? It's a beautiful design. It's world-class architecture. And we have visited some of their new stores in Chicago and other locations, and they're doing very well. And we believe is part of the future of the village. Phil touched on the parking. Parking is critical. We want the best for our customers. We want the easy access, a great experience when they come. In fact, we have added. We are losing some parking spaces right at the front, one of the front entrances. We have a number of mitigation measures that Stan is going to talk about as well. But we have added, for instance, ADA parking spots that weren't there. So we're going to have more ADA parking at the entrance. We're going to have more bike parking. Phil touched on the east entry and how that will tie into the rest of the mall and the Restoration Hardware store. So we think that this is a great story. I can talk about retail forever, but I know I don't have that much time. Just wanted to thank you for the opportunity. We spend a lot of time. We love coming here, and we'd like to continue being part of the community.
Thank you very much. So from here, Stan is the next presenter?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Good evening. I'm Stan Hoffman. I'm the property manager at the Village. And, our community is so fortunate to be the home of two vibrant, first-class shopping centers that are very successful. I've been very fortunate to be part of this community since 1986. I've got the two best jobs you can ever imagine, 29 years at Town Center and the past year and a half at the Village at Corte Madera. And I couldn't be a luckier guy. It's just, they're great projects. As Giancarlo mentioned, the shopping center industry has been evolving to meet the changing needs of our community and our customers. The changes since 1986, Woolworths became REI, Montgomery Ward's became Safeway, JCPenney's was replaced with a Container Store and Bay Club. These are all positive changes that met the needs of the community. Shopping centers that adapt to the needs of their shoppers will continue to thrive, and those that maintain the status quo have and will become irrelevant. Nationwide, there are countless retail stores that close each year, and we are constantly looking for new and exciting things to replace them. The RH project will be a tremendous addition to the Village and to the town of Corte Madera. It's a beautifully designed, world-class building. It'll be beneficial to the entire community, and our tenants are very excited. They can't wait for this to happen. They feel that the introduction of this store will increase their sales and increase trips to the shopping center. You know, this has been a long-term project. It's been gone on for several years, and we've had numerous meetings, and we've heard the community's suggestions and concerns. And based on the community feedback, the project has been revised to what is being proposed today. We have followed all of the required steps asked of us, and we are confident that we have proposed a complementary and beneficial project. Most of the comments on next door are related to parking. Yes, we are rearranging and relocating several parking spaces. To offset the changes, we're planning to have our employees park at the north lot, which will free up additional parking space for our guests. In addition, Restoration is considering a valet parking program that would be open to all visitors to the shopping center. What we're seeing are increased use of Uber and Lyft to the center, as well as countless bicycle trips every day to the center, hence the increased bicycle racks that we're adding. We don't anticipate having a parking problem, but if we do, we'll address it. We intend to, before the gravel lot was available, our employees parked at Redwood High School during the holiday shopping season. We shuttled them back and forth. If necessary, we will reintroduce that program and implement it, if necessary. You know, the village, as Giancarlo mentioned, the village is the crown jewel of all the Maceridge's 48 properties. We maintain the highest sales per square foot of any Maceridge center, and we are the 8th highest sales per square foot of any center in the United States. We are not failing. Our industry is not failing. There are some shopping centers that, again, they've got their heads buried in the sand, and they're not going to make it. That's why we're here tonight, is we want to remain vibrant and relevant to the community. There's no way that we would propose something that would be harmful to our project. So we sincerely hope that after tonight's presentation, where we've all had a chance to listen to, you know, the information that's being proposed, that we can view this thing as we hope as a positive addition to the community, and we hope you're able to support our project. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Who comes next in the group here? Bill? For Rob?
Yeah, this would be the portion presented by Restoration Hardware, which is now known as RH.
Why'd they change that?
I think you had it at the full screen.
So I'll just get us started.
Down at the bottom.
Thank you. Hi, good evening. My name's Rob Eddington. I'm a Director of Development at Restoration Hardware. And like many of the others, we want to say thank you to the commissioners, thank you to the administration staff, and even thank you to the community for being here tonight and over the last 2 years listening to us and having input. We valued it, and you'll see tonight in our presentation how we've input that feedback that we've had. I'm just going to do a brief introduction of some of our team players. And Samina Sadeh, who is a design leader at Restoration Hardware, will be doing part of our presentation. Wayne Chubb, he's with Hobbs & Black. He will be providing some input as well, and he will be our architect of record. We also have Stu Wagner, who is a licensed planner and an employee of Restoration Hardware. Felicia Dean is with Kimley Horn, who is our civil engineer. And we intended to have Jim Gillum with Backham Gillum Kroger tonight, but he fell ill at a later time today, so he was not able to make it. But I would like to say that Restoration Hardware, we're invested in the community, we're committed to the community. Our corporate offices are in Corte Madera. We have about 500 employees there. We have a retail location in the village. We have 25 to 30 employees there. And we have a small baby and child presence as well. So we do want to say that we've extended our agreement with the village, and we intend to be here for quite some time. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Samina.
Yeah, but for the videos. Hi, my name is Samina Saadi, and I'm an architectural design leader with the gallery development team at Restoration Hardware. And like Rob, I'd like to thank the public and the commission for working with us and partnering with us the last couple years to evolve the design to be in a place that meets both of our needs and Macerch's needs as well. I'm here to briefly introduce who RH is as a company and describe our new vision for integrating hospitality as we design an experience unique to Corte Madera, and how that design responds to the site, to the climate, and an aesthetic unique to Marin. I'll go ahead and slide through this. Restoration Hardware, just to give you a brief description, so everyone kind of understands who we are, and if you haven't visited our stores or know much about us, we're a company founded in 1979, and we're started by a man who was restoring his Victorian in Eureka, California, found that there was a need to create a place where people could buy high quality and unique fixturing. Since then, we've evolved to a company that's known as RH, and we've grown to one of the largest home furnishing companies in the world. We're curators of design, and so we basically partner with some of the most renowned artisans in the world. We recreate timeless classics, and we curate all of these pieces into full expressions and our branded expressions, and you'll see, how everything comes together in these galleries. So these photos here are examples of some of the galleries that we've already built, and they'll be very similar to what you'll see in Corte Madera. We're creators of inspiring design, and we always like to say we're obsessed with great architecture. We either find it or build it. So we have 8 next generation galleries, similar to what we're proposing here in Corte Madera. We also have 8 larger format galleries and 50 legacy galleries, similar to what what our current presence is at the village. This slide is an example of the site that we took over in Denver at the Cherry Creek Mall. It was a former Saks building, and this is a prime example of a vestige of what was considered standard retail, a lifeless, windowless box. And what we did was demolished it, and we created a new gallery that has operable windows that allow fresh air and light throughout the entire space. So every room is exposed to natural light and fresh air. We built a beautiful rooftop garden that has quaking aspens and beautiful views of the Rockies, responding to Denver's place. And we also have exterior courtyards on the ground floors that feature water features as well as native plantings. We'll go to this next one. So we like I said earlier, we either find great architecture or we build it. So this was the first historic adaptive reuse project that we built. This was in 2013, so this is about 4 years ago when the project was complete. It's the original historic museum of natural history in Boston, so at the end of Newberry Street, if those of you who are familiar with this area. We went ahead and restored all of the interior original detailing, went through great lengths, and Jim Gillum, who couldn't unfortunately be here tonight, spent a lot of time working with us and bringing this building up to its full glory. Another project was the historic post office in Greenwich. So the U.S. Postal Service was unable to take care and maintain a lot of these properties. So we were able to adaptively reuse this project and create it into a beautiful gallery that has also revitalized the entire urban site. As we've evolved as a brand, and I think what Giancarlo and others at Matrix have touched upon, is that retail has had to change, and we've had to innovate to stay relevant. And part of what we believe deeply as RH and at our core is that we have to really create inspiring spaces and create a magical experience for people to want to come and visit and come over and over again. What our next step was created in Chicago at the Historic Three Arts Club. We found this site. It's in the historic Gold Coast. It's a residential area. It's not a retail area at all. We made a big leap and went ahead and invested in this property and restored it to what it once was. And in doing so, we went ahead and added a hospitality component. We partnered with Brendan Sodakoff, who is a renowned chef in his own right. He worked with Thomas Keller here in up north in Yountville, and in Per Se in New York, and he started his own hospitality group in Chicago. We partnered with him to create this beautiful indoor cafe. So we put a glass skylight over what was an exterior courtyard and created a very generous space that really was meant to feel like a home. You don't see really dense seating here. The menu is a very it's an elevated everyday menu. It's a food that you'd want to eat at home every night, but it's done really well. There's a great wine experience. So we've done exceptionally well here. It's been so inspiring that there have been 32 marriage proposals here in the last 2 years. So that alone is a testament to really how inspiring the spaces are, and really a testament to the love and the care that we put into all of these spaces. They're not just here to continue to stamp out our brand. This is a wine vault that's connected to the restaurant, and we have plans similar for Corte Madera, where patrons can come and enjoy wine and taste on these perimeter areas of the site. This is what we call a pantry. And Brendan has a small kiosk business called the Donut Vault in Chicago, and we've expanded that concept, and it's done very well, and the donuts are amazing. I'm not a big donuts person, but they are really good. So you can come up and grab a cup of coffee or grab a glass of wine or have a donut. We opened this in the Gold Coast, and we had to really partner with the community. I think there was some trepidation regarding how much traffic and what we would bring to a residential area. And it's been amazing how well received the restaurant has been, and as well as the site. And just some of the comments that you can read here, people think it's absolutely beautiful. They think this is, it's not a store, but it's a showroom. And it's the nicest and least commercial neighborhoods in downtown. And they think that, this gallery itself has been a huge addition to their community. And we hope that people feel the same about the RH new gallery proposed for Corte Madera. So this, again, is Brendan Sodakoff, who we're partnering with. And he really is passionate about what he does. He's passionate about high quality food. He's, he was trained in California, so there's a real sense of using seasonal ingredients, meaningful menu that's relevant to its site. So I think, as we develop and curate the menu for Corte Madera, I think we'll all be pleasantly surprised and to see the food offerings expanded here at the village. So this was just a sample of some of the food photography that we've had in Chicago and our recently open location in Toronto. This is the burger, and his burger at El Cheval is won awards. This is an example of that, and just to give you guys an idea of what the offerings are. And these are his donuts. They're amazing. This is just a small snippet of the gallery we just opened last month in Toronto, and it's a smaller expression, but you can see how intimate and how green-filled and just very residential and warm. How it doesn't really feel as commercial as you would think a retail experience does. So I'm going to just go ahead. I have to figure out how to escape out of this and show you a short video on Chicago. Oh, I don't know if it's going to like this surface. We could sit up here and talk, but I think the video really speaks for itself, and it'll help you guys give an idea generally of how we're approaching these projects.
We have always tried to blur the lines between residential and retail. The next logical step was, how do you blur the lines between home and hospitality? This was a location that we all knew was a long shot. I don't think there's a retailer on the planet that would have considered this location. But we thought, what if we take this old building that's been sitting here mothballed for 20 years and we bring it back to life?
This project is not separate from the traditional history of the three arts. It's more a continuation of building a new chapter.
It was a building that was for young women to study the arts, the performing arts, the musical arts, and the visual arts. We thought we could bring some of those arts back to life. We could leave the historic stage and we could have musical performances here. We could do an RH contemporary art gallery on the top floor. And then we thought, and we can bring in the culinary arts.
If you really think about it, if I told you to define a restaurant, you would probably give me all these rules, right? As waiters or hosts and bartenders, and you order and food comes out, all those things. And I didn't want any kind of reference point, really.
There's no hostess, there's no reservations. You can come sit down in the courtyard, you can sit down in the library, you can sit down up on the modern floor, you can sit down up on the roof. Everything you look at, you can buy, and everywhere you sit, you can eat.
I just want it to be almost residential in feel. If you could have amazing food at your house every single day, that's what this would be.
We want to be able to attract interior designers and architects here. And so we said, why don't we build a design atelier? It's an incredible design resource, from the window treatments to the rugs, to the furniture finishes, to the fabric finishes. It's all accessible, and it's easy to start to concept and design your home.
Coming to RH now represents something that nobody would have predicted a few years ago.
This isn't really a retail space. This is a space where people come to start to imagine their life, right? Like, what does their home look like?
It makes everyone pause when you experience it to consider new things. Think about the way we live. Think about the way we eat. Think about the way we want to interact socially. I I think that's really what RH is all about, is looking for new ways of expressing lifestyle.
It's impossible to relate what this is unless you see it. You can try to describe it, but the greatest success I've had, I just stop talking and just invite them in and just say, come on, let's take a walk around. And everyone leaves saying the same thing, that this is amazing. And it is.
All of these things together, from the product to the integration of the hospitality and then the people, create something that is truly one of a kind in the world and is truly a field of dreams.
Yes, Gabe should hopefully get us out of there, right?
Right click. And say minimize.
We need an IT person on staff.
Oh, yeah, there you go, quit at the bottom. That should work. Yeah.
I was a very young girl.
No,
You got it. Still open in Boston. I went to it.
I'll just, and if we just do that full view.
No, you go to view, and then it's full screen.
Buildings, pilings and stuff.
Full screen, not read.
Last, especially when we think
There you
about
go.
floods here.
So we went through Chicago, and you can see, it's really, that video really shows you how we're evolving our brand and our spaces, and how we're creating these inspiring spaces that we hope that help build community, and they're enhancing the communities that we're building, and especially here in Corte Madera, where our home offices are located, and where all of our most of our corporate employees live. I personally live here in San Rafael, and I have 2 young children that I bring to the center regularly, and so it's meaningful on many levels. So I looked at all that. That was great. And I just want to introduce Wayne Chubb, who's our architect of record. He's with Hobbs & Black, and he's going to go ahead and just talk about the building itself.
How long do you think your presentation is? And what else do you guys have to bring to the table?
I think bringing up the rear.
Okay.
A couple minutes.
All right, thank you.
About 2 minutes and close.
Well, good evening. I'll try to cut, and we can always circle back with questions afterwards. But again, I'm Wayne Chubb with Hobbs & Black Architects, and I just wanted to say that we've had the opportunity to work with RH on several of these exciting projects over the last few years, and they truly are a testament. They're always pushing us as architects to think and push the envelope and to think differently. So working with Jim Gillum, we think we are bringing something, or proposing something in Corte Madera that will be a great asset to the village, but also a testament to a new retail environment. Building on the introduction by the staff, I just wanted to quickly walk through a couple of the elements here in the architecture. As you can see in the model in front of you, hopefully you can look at it in a second, the property is on access to the central courtyard within the mall. It's 2 stories with a rooftop conservatory scenery loft. The second level terraces back, as you can see in the rendering, with the 3rd level conservatory set behind the pyramid skylight, which sits over top of the cafe. The exterior of the building is a 6-coat hand-applied Venetian plaster. The exterior steel and steel doors and windows are pronounced around all the facades, allowing light to filter in as well as activity to filter out onto the sidewalk. The second level of the facade is ornated with
Juliet balconies. You can see them on the terraces there, and those are on both the east and the west. Jumping into the floor plans, one of the things that moving with the new concept is that in your home, the kitchen is the heart of the activity. So in this plan, you can see the kitchen is in the center with the restaurant cafe on the west side there, north being towards the commission. The in between the kitchen and the restaurant is the wine vault and the pantry concept that you saw some images of earlier. The remainder of the space surrounding those are retail spaces, which are varying size rooms that will showcase the bedroom, living, dining spaces of the various merchandise. As you go up one of the two grand staircases on either end, you get up to the second floor, where you can turn left or right or look forward and see daylight. Up here would be another one of the displays of one of the other RH family RH display lines. Also up here might be the design atelier that you were able to see in the video. These little small windows around the U shape here will allow you to overlook into the cafe and get a sense of the noise, the activity, the water, kind of playing with your senses. Moving up to the rooftop, you come off of the stairs and you're covered under a conservatory. Turning to the east or west, you can traverse out into the park setting, we'll call it. It's an outdoor display, outdoor furniture display, as well as trees and kind of communal space to interact. As a company, RH is committed to the best sustainable practices. They've challenged us to look at the gallery design and how to take advantage of the local climate, the microclimate when designing the building systems. With Title 24 as the baseline, we're looking at ways to integrate the practices seamlessly into this refined design. Some of the sustainable practices we're investigating are including natural ventilation, photovoltaic technologies, gray water harvesting, LED lighting, reduced water usage with low flow fixtures, and a lot of low VOC materials. Kind of captures the building as a whole. I'm going to pass this off to Rob and close it up.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you. I know that public comment is important here, so I'll just real quickly comment on some community outreach that we have done. So we did submit an application in June of 2015. And over the summer of 2015 and into the fall, we had significant community outreach. We also held an open house in our mall location. A couple things that we learned through that outreach. Our original building was 52 feet tall. So we reduced the height of the building to 46 feet. And actually, the rooftop garden is actually at 34 feet. We've been studying at 35 feet so we can address some FEMA flood control issues if we need to. We also looked at that building. It was 52,000 square feet. We decided to reduce the footprint by about 30 feet. By doing that, we were able to gain 60 parking spaces back into the mall, which was really important to us. And the number one comment we got was the community would like a food and beverage component. At that time, we had opened our Chicago store, and it made absolute sense to take retail space out of the store and bring in this food and beverage component. So we actually reduced the store, the retail gallery space, by 15,000 square feet. With the kitchen and the wine vault and the cafe, the little pantry area, we added in another 8,000 square feet, so the net reduction was about 7,000 square feet. It's really important to us, for the community to understand that we really have what we consider two public amenities here. We have the food and beverage component, and we have the rooftop. And we really invite the community to come and experience that. I do want to just show one quick element here. We were able to take a camera up to 35 feet. So this would be your actual view that we took on Friday from our rooftop garden. Just so happened there was a little bit of sunset there and a little bit of weather too, but we really wanted everyone to see this and share it with you. So again, as we noted, our corporate office is in Corte Madera. This will be a unique and special building for Corte Madera. And we're so very proud of it, and we look forward to your input and moving forward with the process. Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. So would you say that concludes the RH and Macerich presentation?
That concludes the RH and Macerich presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Informative. Phil?
Actually, I was just going to turn it to you, Commissioner Chase, whether on the agenda we have public comment and then questions from the Planning Commission.
Well, very quickly, I want to check in with the other commissioners and see if they have anything that they must ask right now at this point.
Not right now for me.
No. No.
All right, Dr. Bundy?
I can wait.
All right, Phyllis. Okay, good enough. So that means at this unheard of early hour of 10 to 8, we get to line up and you get to direct your comments to the commission. So you have 3 minutes in which to do so in this public comment section. I would like to keep a line behind that podium so that we don't lag in between commenters. As a show of hands very quickly, can I see how many people want to stand up and comment on this section? Okay, thank you. So that said, we have just a couple of elements that are in our rules and town guidelines. And it says in there that we'd like you to keep it to 3 minutes. We're asking that in this section you speak on the architecture and the building. Later on in the meeting, we will go to the parking lot comments unless you need to go home and so forth. You're welcome to comment if you need to. There will be a further description of the parking lot issues. Right now, we've been presented with the building and the rationale for the building and what it means to RH. So I ask, as our requirements state, that you speak to the commission and that you speak in a manner befitting a public meeting. So with that said, please step up to the microphone and start your commentary. And we have the... What? Yes, and you have to say who you are and where you're from. So please, young lady.
Hi, my name's Lucy McPherson. I've lived in Corte Madera all my life. Almost every week, my family and I go to the town center and the village. I've watched the town center and the village evolve into a fun, welcoming place. For example, the town center has added lots of flowers, outdoor seating, also a outdoor fireplace. The village has added water sculptures that little kids can play in. I've visited the Restoration Hardware project site, and I have viewed the architectural plans and have studied the videos that show that the project elevations and the spectacular roof deck. I think I understand the project. My reaction to the project was welcoming, beautiful, spectacular, comfortable, and relaxing. The trees on the roof deck remind me of the gardens in Paris. It is obviously a place I would like in Corte Madera, and my only hope is when I'm an adult I can afford to shop there. And from the videos, it makes me really want to just hang out there every day. I really hope my parents and I can shop there. It just looks like a really great, welcoming place to be.
Thank you very much. All right. So, first speaker, now I know there's a lot of you there, so please step up to the microphone and identify yourself, and let's get on with public comment, please. So don't be shy. We're not usually shy here, so.
Form that line.
please, make the line.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Phyllis Galanis. I both live and work in the town of Corte Madera. I am really pleased that RH gave such a great presentation and showed us really what you have in mind for this building. And I think it does sound like it'll be a beautiful building. My big objection is, well, twofold. One, where you're putting it, like right in the center. The height of the building, that it's barely discernible by the story poles, so I had another objection with that, and this goes to the commission. I think you needed to do something better to show people exactly the size that this building is going to be. I know why you said you couldn't put mesh between them, but maybe you could have photoshopped a presentation of the building in the site and showing exactly how tall and how wide it is going to be. It will impede from the Bay Trail, just our natural view of Mount Tam. And to me, a natural beauty that we have is not replaceable by a building. To say that we could go up and sit on the rooftop garden and then see it, that means we have to go into a store, climb up to the second floor to see something that we can now see just as we walk along the trail. I think that's really not conducive to the friendliness and the expansiveness of Corte Madera. That's one of our charms, is that we can see out. We can see the mountain. We can see the bay. And you're thinking then of putting more trees on the garden area, and that is further going to impede the view of the mountain. So those are basically my objections, since we're not getting into the parking lot at this particular time. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Next, please.
Hi, Pat Ravazio, 427 Oakdale Avenue. I do support this proposal. I think redefining and making retail new and fresh and interesting is going to be necessary in this internet age. So I do support it. I think the timing is a little unfortunate because I'm actually here as a representative of the committee looking at new pedestrian and bicycle connections between the two sides of town. And as the Planning Commission has not heard, but the Town Council has, we have Skidmore, Owings and Merrill as a volunteer architect working on this project. And also Caltrans is gung-ho to make it happen. And depending on the analysis going on now of the Tamalpais overcrossing, it may or may not require a complete rebuild, which could then push things back for 15 years. And if that happens, Caltrans is saying they would be very amenable to a connection directly between the two shopping malls going over 101 right at the point where the Restoration Hardware looks in. So that view of what it would look like could have a beautiful Netherlands-style pedestrian bridge that would connect the two shopping centers. And if that were there, especially during the holiday season, it would actually be closer to park in front of the Bay Club to get to Restoration Hardware than it would if you were in the new parking lot. So what I would like to ask the commission to do is to make sure that part of this project includes a commitment. We did meet with Restoration Hardware and some representatives from Mace Rich, Stan Hoffman, who were very optimistic and very supportive of these pedestrian and bicycle improvements. But I would like to see that commitment in writing, on paper, and with a financial component to it. Perhaps we don't need to quite fancy up that extra parking lot as much, and perhaps maybe $1 million or $2 million of those funds could be set aside for future pedestrian, bicycle safety improvements that would allow us to really not just connect the two shopping malls, which would be a great thing for the retailers and for the stores, but also for the communities, because a retail bridge that would go between these two shopping shopping centers could also get our kids safely to school, could get seniors safely to and from the two sides of town. As we know, we are the town that not a river runs through it, but a highway runs through it. And connecting these two parts of town should be a really important part of any project that is involved in either one of these two shopping centers moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat.
Michael Harlock, 533 Redwood Avenue, Corte Madera. I submitted a letter to the commission and staff, and I think you've all seen that. So I'm only going to summarize maybe 3 of the points in that letter that relates particularly to the building. And they're also a reaction to some of the negativity that I've heard expressed on Nextdoor and elsewhere. And in thinking about it, there's 3 suggestions that I think could make the project stronger, and they're only suggestions at this point in time. I believe the building is a very elegant architectural expression. I particularly think the building is in the right place. If one were designing a mall, and I'm sure you've all seen them, that had more than 2 anchors, this would be the logical place to put a 3rd anchor. My suggestions to get to the core are, if the commission felt they wanted to strengthen it, one is site planning. From the beginning, I've done a lot of commercial site planning, worked for a firm that did nothing but before my own practice. If the building was longer in an east-west direction, Rob made the point that a change had freed up 50 parking spaces. There's actually an opportunity with the cooperation of the fire district to add about 50 or 60 more spaces. If you look later, the driveways on the north-south and east are single-loaded or not loaded at all with parking. Now, this would require a longer building moving east without losing any square footage. But I think it might be worth looking at gaining another 50 or 60 parking spaces in the most critical area. Second, and I've talked to RH a little bit about this, it would be, I think, great if there was a pass-through from east to west. The eastern face doesn't really have an entrance. That's where the kitchen is. And I think it might be interesting to look at creating an arcade so people coming in from the east and it's raining could actually walk through the building to get to the center of the village, walk past the restaurant. Right now, it's only accessible from the east. From the west. Some of these drawings, I think, are confusing because they talk about the east entry, and I conceive of it as the west. And then I'll quickly say, the third relates to something that I know very little about in terms of restoration hardware, but I know what I like to buy there. And I was wondering if part of the first floor could be, and I know this is not the current flagship concept, off-the-shelf items that are so enjoyable to buy at Christmas and the holidays. If part of that ground floor near the cafe could be for what retailers sometimes call ning-a-nings, or things that are fun, nostalgic, and and would tie it more to the retail focus and not simply a designer gallery. I know that's a rethinking for RH, but I know also this flagship concept is evolving. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Hi, my name is Gary Stymus, and I'm here on behalf of the Corte Madera Chamber of Commerce. I just want to go on record saying that we're very supportive of this project. I think Rob and his team have done a great job reaching out to all the stakeholders here in the community, and I've seen a couple of different presentations. I think they've taken all the feedback that's been given to them and really considered it and coming back with something thoughtful that will definitely benefit the community. Additionally, I think, given the state of retailing these days, that having a strong and vibrant shopping center is really important for Corte Madera, and I think this is certainly something that can drive a ton of foot traffic, not just to the village, but to the town in general, and that's just going to be to the benefit of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Next.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Hayden Ongaro. I am the chairman of the Marin Economic Forum. We are a public-private nonprofit organization, and we're supporting small and large businesses in Marin, trying to make sure this is a good place to do business, to help companies grow and stay and thrive. We have met with both Restoration Hardware and Mace Rich and studied the plans, and we are in favor of this project. Seeing what's happened, I grew up in Marin, kind of the transition of our downtown areas, our transition of malls, how retail has to be reinvented. I think Restoration Hardware has gone above and beyond to do something really creative, something that I think not only helps the village and other tenants there, but is something that's really good for Corte Madera to be proud of. I've attended other meetings. Sometimes projects are put forth that haven't been well thought out, and commissioners like yourselves need to ask people to step up on design and put more into it. I think in this case, this is something that Corte Madera can be proud of. I think this is something that the entire community in Marin can be proud of. Their innovative ideas on retail to combine, food, beverage, make it a real experience. I think that's where retail is going, and this is just something we can be very proud of. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Hi, I'm Robin Sternberg. I'm also with Marin Economic Forum. I'm the CEO, and I'm a resident of Kentfield. And I want to just follow Hayden's remarks just before me and provide additional support for this project. Hayden talked about the merits of the project and all the innovation and creativity and quality that this project provides to the community. I want to speak a little bit about the jobs and economic impact. I believe that this new project will create something around 60 new jobs. 60? Yeah, I think so. That was the number. Was that about right? I think. Okay, and in addition to that, I also looked at, they have over 500 employees at RH, and I was curious to find out how many of those current employees are Marin residents, and it's almost about half of them. So this company represents 217 Marin residents who depend on the success of this company for their own livelihood. And so it's really, I've learned that they really like to hire local employees as much as they can. And so we've already talked about the benefits of, hoping that they would try to hire local employees for this new retail store. The other thing I want to talk about is the multiplier effect. You probably already have heard that every job that somebody has in an export-related industry, and that means, selling product outside your own region, creates 3 other multiplier jobs and supports other retail and local businesses and services as well. So this project really will continue to have even a stronger effect on the entire community from an economic standpoint. I just believe that we are so lucky to have this innovative company that's homegrown, that's right here, from our own neighborhood, and that they are investing in our backyard. And that's really something to appreciate. I also, in my research, have found that they are one of our most generous corporate citizens. They are committed to education, and I know that they are one of the leading sponsors of Schools Rule. They helped with Corte Madera's centennial celebration a few years ago, with large donations for that. They're also one of the leaders in the Corte Madera Zero Waste by 2030 initiative. So all those things kind of point to, in my mind, this is a company that has a lot of good values. They're doing this project in a respectful way, and it meets the Marin Economic Forum criteria to support economic vitality that provides value to our economy and our community, and while it respects the environment and social impact. So we support the continued success of this company and this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who's next, please? So if we can keep a line going there, I would appreciate it.
I'm Bill Hester, and I am in favor of the project as presented. I think it would be an asset to Corte Madera, and it particularly is in scale that fits in well with the shopping center. And the placement at the shopping center is desirable as opposed to if something was put off in the gravel lot that as an out parcel, that would, in my mind, would be mall sprawl. This is more integrated with the rest of the center. Be a good project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Susan Sullivan, and I'm 30 El Camino Drive. I'm in East Corte Madera, so this impacts me quite a bit. I think it's a beautiful design, really exciting store, but currently 2 months out of the year, I have a hard time getting to my house a lot of the time because of the traffic currently from the mall. And there's not enough parking right now. People go and they drive around and around and around. They park in the extra lot. I know we're not talking about parking right now, but that is the huge concern for us, the traffic and the parking. And I know they did the study in June, but what's interesting is you should do this study in November, December. What they should do right now is block off and say nobody can park in that space, and then see how people feel about it for the next 2 months. I think that would give people a real feel of what the parking's, and it's not really what's going to happen because there's going to be more people coming to go to this project, so that it only represents what's being lost. It's not the extra traffic that we're going to gain to that area. So they're saying they're being really concerned about the neighborhood and the people in Corte Madera, but it makes it difficult for the people who live in the East Corte Madera to get around. If they could put this on top of Macy's, that would be much better in my mind. But to put it in the parking lot, I don't think it's going to work well. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Who's next, please?
Colin Rand. I live on Chickasaw Court. So a couple, like everybody else, I think the design is great. Nice job there. A couple concerns, and then one thing that was brought to my attention that I really want to be in favor of, which is the pedestrian walkway really does have a chance to change the dynamic of people going in and out of the two malls, making it more accessible. I bike with my kids over to the village. It's not great. Having something more accessible would be a really big benefit to my immediate vicinity. So I would urge you to wait and see how those two projects can align, because you may decide to reallocate how spaces are set on the back half of the property as well, and that can change your spaces allocation for this project. So I think that's a really important input. Second, I'm not crazy about the height of the project. It sets a precedent for going up and blocking views from different parts of the community. And if it's done once and it gets through, it's a beautiful design. But the precedent there sets things for your eye to be less intrusive of other projects that might be larger as well. So I'm concerned about the height of the project. The last is more of a question or a comment. Is could the space be open for community use in other venues? So if we're going to be using the parking lot where we had fundraisers, I'm not suggesting putting the circus in the restaurant, but there could be other interesting uses if it's more open to the community. And I apologize, I have to run home to put some kids to bed.
Duty calls. Thank you very much. All right. Who's next? That can't be all of the people who want to comment, so please.
Hi, I'm Ed Hibbler. I live on the Larkspur, on Elm Avenue in Larkspur, just on the Corte Madera boundary. I think what we need to consider here is whether this store is going to be a benefit to the community or it's only going to be a benefit for the applicant. In my view, this proposal will disrupt the architectural integrity of the original design. The original design for this shopping center provided for adequate parking so that people could have a pleasant shopping experience, which I think it has been to this point. Having lived here for about 35 years, I think it's been very pleasant. But I think this building is probably going to be too big for the site, and it's going to displace 180 parking spaces. Now, the result of this loss of parking is that people are going to be driving around in circles trying to find a parking space, waiting for parking spaces to open up, and it won't be very pleasant. Eventually, they'll get tired of driving in circles and go to some other shopping center. The alternative parking lot, or the gravel lot, isn't really much of an option, especially during a driving rainstorm. We've seen a lot of rainstorms last winter, and with climate change, we're probably going to see more rainstorms that are very severe. So to ask people to walk 5 or 10 minutes from the now gravel lot to get to Macy's is probably asking too much. I think we should consider whether this will have an adverse effect on some of the other retail stores, like Macy's on the far end of the shopping center from the gravel lot, and the other retail establishments on that end of the shopping center. They're already facing a lot of internet competition, so are some of these stores going to have to close because people can't find a parking place and have to and go somewhere else? I would suggest that the solution for this is to have the RH store on the now gravel parking lot across the street. That way, all the stores would have adequate parking. The parking that exists now would continue to exist in the shopping center, and there'd be additional parking for RH across the street. I also agree with the previous gentleman about the height of the store at 3 stories. This is setting a precedent. And I don't know why we should have a change in our zoning and also our general plan in order to benefit just one store. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi. I'm Susie Beatty. I live in East Corte Madera. You have a letter from me. I wasn't really going to speak tonight, but I think I'll take this moment to speak up. I love this project. I just love it. I think the building is amazing, and I think it's going to make that center a fantastic place. Frankly, in my opinion, the architecture of the old center is not very interesting, and I think this will bring a whole new dimension to it. You know me here as being a person who does a lot of volunteer work in the town, but I actually have some experience. I was an executive at I. Magnin and Company for many years, and I ran galleries in Sausalito for 30 years before I retired. The fact that you have to keep things moving forward is everything about retail business. If we don't do it, I could see this, as just being a shame. As far as the location of it, it's centered. You can see it when you look down on it. The shape, it's right. It's perfect for the lot. I have faith that the parking will get worked out. We have a lot of issues with parking and traffic no matter what. We have to deal with it. And I like the idea that there are going to be some larger spaces for larger vehicles in the new other lot. But thank you. I hope it goes forward. It's a lot of work for everybody.
Thank you very much.
Tor White, 526 Tamalpais. Been in the town here over a quarter century. Come from Menlo Park, so a quarter century down there next to Stanford Shopping Center. Watch that shopping center evolve. I think this is kind of on par with that. It's going to really change the dynamic. I've seen what RH has done in the last couple of years. I was watching what they've done in Santa Monica and other places, so I'm excited the Galleria concept is coming here. And just a shame that the SMART train isn't going to alleviate the parking by having another option for people to get there, because that would have really helped with that east entrance and the ability to bring a lot of people in without all the cars. And good luck going forward.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Margaret Bandel at 180 Prince Royal Drive in East Corte Madera. I think the building is beautiful. I think it's beautiful for Boston. I think it's beautiful for Chicago. But what I haven't heard is how the commission is addressing the idea of how this building is right, or the idea of a flagship store of this size is right for the size of our town. I haven't heard anybody comment about whether Corte Madera is the right place for a building that's right in Boston and Chicago. The size, the span is beautiful. I just don't know about how my town is going to fit with this size and importance of a flagship store.
Thank you, Margaret.
David McPherson, 25-year resident, vice chair of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and we've been following this project closely. I just don't think there are enough superlatives to talk about this kind of world-class architecture. And the idea that, really our largest corporate citizen would choose to invest its resources here really says a lot about their trust and their insights into what they can bring to the town. And as I've read the negative comments online, I've sort of struggled with, do we even really deserve a project like this? It makes me think about what really is our character. Are we the kind of the provincial old guy saying, get off my lawn, and complaining about everything? Or are we nimble? Are we sophisticated? Are we evolving as a town? And I think we are. I think we are. Any change obviously has to go through this process, but I just think this brings a world-class destination retail environment that any location should welcome. And I'm grateful that Restoration Hardware RH now is willing to make this investment in our town, and I think it'll benefit us for many, many years to come.
Thank you, David.
It's bigger, much bigger, right.
All right. I see Patty Stollier moving around. Are you coming up? Okay. Well.
What?
Okay. So before we continue on, I'm just going to check with everybody here. Is there anyone else that wants to comment on this portion of the presentation so far? Please.
I'm Gwen Toso, and I live in Bandrono Avenue in Corte Madera for 35 years. And I'm in the village quite a bit because my dog likes to walk there. And it's a very popular dog walking area. And I just want to add my voice to the naysayers, because I think that building is right in the center where people come, and then they might go down and to Macy's and over to Nordstrom's. And I think this is like a big block in the, like a impediment. And it's also, my other objection is I like to walk on the trails across from the village. It's very beautiful. I've made paintings of the views of the mountain, and I think this building would just come right in the center of it and be too imposing a feature for that place. I would like to see it. I like the building. I could see it in the gravel lot. I can see it not so north-east, wait a minute, not so east-west oriented, more of a thinner shape. That's all.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to say, based on the visual survey, that that's all the people are going to comment at this point in the meeting. It's 8:30, we've been here. We'll take about a 7-minute break here before we go into the gravel lot description. So, thank you.
Oh.
All right, thank you. We're going to continue now. All right, so at this point, we'll go ahead and delve into the gravel lot side of the story, and this will be a staff report by Phil to continue on that effort, and then another continued presentation by Macerich on the gravel lot.
Thank you. Yes, so the second aspect of the project is the modification of the gravel lot. The gravel lot will be paved, striped, landscaped, illuminated, and biofilter storm drain system integrated into the project to capture all storm runoff into the rain gardens at the what I'm going to call the southwest corner, the southeast corner, and the northern top, shall we say. All lighting, just going through my list here again, 452 parking spaces. All lighting will be night sky compliant. Drought tolerant and native landscaping will be installed. Pedestrian safety will be enhanced, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. There's also, within the environmental document, there is a discussion of an optional fence to go around the perimeter of the lot to keep pedestrians and dogs out of the marsh area. That was a request of Marin Audubon Society, and the applicant is aware of that, and there's some discussion of that in the staff report, giving dimensions of the fence and locations of the fence. The gravel lot will also continue to be used for certain community events, probably not large things such as a circus, but certainly community events will continue to be operated, will be able to be accessed and used there, and we'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about the development agreement. In terms of the gravel lot, the existing and proposed, this just gives you a view of what's out there today. And what I did is to show that the one aspect is that the size of the gravel lot, the size of the parking area, is changing very, very little. And in fact, these green areas I've shown is where the gravel is going away, and it's being replaced with the bioswales and the rain gardens. This is just, again, my rough sketching of this area here. Turns into this, and these two areas as well turn into rain gardens. And so we're currently, there are drop inlets in the middle of the parking lot. The water goes into those drop inlets and goes out into the bay at these two areas. With the current design, water will be filtrated through the rain gardens first, and then if those overflow, then water will gradually go out into the bay. So it's a much cleaner, more environmentally sensitive way to treat the stormwater than is working today. One thing that came up in the environmental document was the issue of pedestrian safety. I'll go back here. Currently, people, when they use the gravel lot, they actually, there's signs of pedestrians dash across this area right here to get the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Folks that park here run across the street, trample through the vegetation here, and head to Nordstrom's or somewhere else. That happens today, and according to the traffic consultants, with increased use of this lot by improving it and having more people park there, that will happen more often. So to mitigate that impact, the traffic study recommends that the median be infilled this area here. And so I'll go back. Currently, obviously, you can dash right across. So fill in this median, so that will eliminate left turns going into the parking lot and left turns going out of the parking lot. And it will also create a barrier, so folks would see this will be either a 4-foot hedge or a 4-foot fence. And again, if they really want to do it, I'm sure they're going to go across. But this is the best, or is the recommendation of the traffic consultant of how to deter folks from crossing the median. Also, these pedestrian amenities have been added at this point and this point, and also along here to, again, funnel folks. If you're parking here, come out this way, walk along the sidewalk, go across the signalized, through the signalized intersection, and safely get to the mall. So that is one of the mitigation measures for the gravel lot. There's one other thing. The big picture planning items and the big picture part of this application is a general plan amendment and a zoning amendment to change the gravel lot from what is currently designated as, which is wetlands and marshland, to mixed-use regional serving commercial. And so it will have the same general plan designation as the shopping center itself. The application also requests to change the zoning ordinance and make that document consistent, and change the zoning designation from parks and open space and natural habitat, which it has been for many, many years, also to regional shopping district, which again is the same zoning designation as the village shopping center. In the staff report, we go into a fair amount of detail explaining the purpose of this general plan amendment and the zoning ordinance amendment, and why we think it's the right way to go. I've highlighted them here. One is that this will formalize the historic use of the gravel lot. As you all know, the gravel lot has been used for parking for many, many years. There's been a number of different agreements regarding the parking there. Expansion of the village has included allowing parking on the gravel lot formally. And so there are a number of, there's been a historic use for many years. The general plan also has a goal that says the town shall support vibrant and strong commercial centers, and specifically the village, and encourages the expansion and the growth of the village to within the guidelines of the 2009 general plan. This will also memorialize the general plan amendment, zoning amendment, and the development agreement, which Todd's going to talk a little bit more about, will also memorialize the use of the gravel lot for parking and community events. And so it'll set it in stone, it'll set it consistent, and so that use will be consistent with general plan and the zoning ordinance. This change will also shift the maintenance and liability and the security of the gravel lot to the village instead of the town. This project will also, by putting the parking here, it will provide parking which is, in many people's opinion, has a minimal visual impact and minimal construction impacts compared to an alternative, which would be could be structured parking. And structured parking is mentioned in the general plan as well. However, this the expansion of the village is stated in the general plan. Expansion of the village requires more parking, and this is an alternative of where to put that parking. The general plan, zoning ordinance, and development agreement will also facilitate the expansion or facilitate this particular project. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Todd briefly. He has been working closely with the council on the development agreement and with Macerich on, and I'll hand it over to him.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you, Commissioners. Todd Cusimano, your town manager. I wanted to start off, there's been a lot of questions over the past year on projects in general, and this one I think ties into it a little bit, and I wanted to just, even though it doesn't come into your decision-making matrix, I do want to share it because I think there's a misconception of what economic development means for our town in general. And when I tell this brief summary story, I think then I want to go into the development agreement and the history of the original agreement back in 1995, because I think it ties together of the special relationship and what the shopping centers and sales tax revenue mean to our town. And when you look at our revenue, we have two major revenue sources. One is property taxes. This year, we take in approximately $6.1 million in property tax revenue. It's steadily increasing every year by 1% to 2%. The other one is sales tax revenue. Sales tax revenue a couple years ago was $5.9 million. In 16-17, last fiscal year, it raised to $6.4 million. This current fiscal year, it's raised another $300,000 to $6.7 million. Of that $6.7 million, approximately $4.5 million of that comes from our two shopping centers, Corte Madera Town Center and the Village Shopping Center. I say that because they're very important, and it's been talked about in this meeting to this point, the importance of the viability of our shopping centers and when we look at these projects. So we throw out numbers and we talk about it, and it's something that as a town manager I think about, and the council ultimately considers if and when projects get to them. So when you go back and you talk about the gravel lot and you talk about the original agreement going back to 1995, and it's on page 8 and 9, it's actually at the top of page 9 of your staff report. I just want to read, I think staff did a good job explaining it, but it's a unique agreement that we made, and it is town property. It is town property, but I think the story of how it became town property is very important, and it's symbolic of our relationship with the shopping center. So in 1995, the town entered into an agreement with the owners of the Village Shopping Center parcels, which provided the town would acquire the gravel lot site. And so that gravel lot site at the time was owned by GE Capital. And so the property owners of Macy's, Nordstrom, and Hahn, now owned by Macerich, requested that the town purchase the land from GE Capital. As part of the deal, for the purchase of the land, both Macy's and Nordstrom paid their portion of the purchase price up front, and Hahn asked the town to issue bonds, so put a funding mechanism in place, a financing mechanism in place for Hahn so they could purchase the property. The town did that, and so by the town initiating that funding mechanism for Hahn, Nordstrom, and Macy's, it stayed it went into the town's name from GE Capital into the town of Corte Madera. But the funding, the payments for the purchase of that property were from Nordstrom, Macy's, and Nordstrom, Macy's, and Hahn. The town of Corte Madera did not pay for that property, and it's important. And there's and as we move forward, and the reasons why, we weren't here in 1995, but I think it goes back to that symbolic relationship of how important the shopping centers are. I think if you look in the United States, especially up and down the state of California, our sales tax revenue is in the top 3%. It allows us to do a lot of things as a town, and I think the council has always recognized that over the years. So now fast forward into, and again, in that original agreement, it's unique too, because think about this, the town didn't purchase that property, 3 other entity groups of the Village Shopping Center did. But the town can't, there's some agreements in 1995. The town can't sell that property without the permission of the Village Shopping Center. They have to agree to it. Both parties have to agree that anything outside of parking, the use of overflow parking, both sides have to agree to it. So here you have a binding agreement for lifetime that We didn't purchase, it's in our name. We helped the shopping center out. In return, they allowed it to be in our name, right? And so they also provide $10,000 annually for maintenance cost. But being in the town's name, we're responsible for all liability, trips and falls out there. That has a number. It averages anywhere from 10 to 20,000 annually to us. Every 3 to 4 years, we put approximately $30,000 to $40,000 into that gravel lot for maintenance as we do some major overhauls. But that was the agreement in 1995. So fast forward to 2015, the applicants started to look at potentially this project. Parking's a big issue. One of the core issues of that is they need parking to be used for their project. They need those parking spaces, and so that changes the agreement. So originally in 2015, Macerich approached us and requested to purchase the property. And so the town council at the time directed the town attorney and the town manager, David Bracken at the time, to begin negotiations. Really quickly on, the town was not going to sell the property. They weren't willing to sell it, the council. So this negotiation went on for 2 years. And just really in summary form, we started to work towards what a potential agreement would look like. And again, it was necessary to do this development agreement up front because the applicant needed to know ultimately at the end of the day, would the council consider, bless you, consider such a project? And so under the development agreement, would they allow the applicants to change the original 1995 agreement? And so that took two years. And so before you, and there's a staff report attached, there's a matrix also that gives the differences between the original agreement and the development agreement. I'm going to summarize those really quickly for you, but that is in the March 21st, 2017 council meeting. And really the highlights are, it's a 99-year agreement. It's $320,000 revenue per year. There has been a lot of questions, and it's fair enough. We did discuss it in the council meeting, but a lot of people expect escalators in a 99-year deal. And what I would just caution everybody to consider that this is a 2-year negotiation. It was absolutely considered, and what we looked at in that number, we considered all options available to us based on the circumstances I've just shared with you over the last 5 minutes. This is a just under a $32 million deal on the gravel lot, which we retain ownership of. We also no longer have to maintain the overflow parking, the gravel lot, for the next 99 years. We are also named as an insured on the gravel lot, so the liability transfers away from us. We have coverages for that now. They're also putting up to $5 million of improvements into that gravel lot. And so when you step back and look at it, it's really, I consider it a $5 million plus just under a $32 million deal, $37 million, plus annual maintenance costs for 99 years. We no longer have the liability, or we have insurance coverage under the liability coverages. And that's really what we discussed at that March 21st meeting, which I recommended strongly to the council. And I felt it was a fair deal. I think sometimes it's always easy to always ask for more and negotiate more, but sometimes you have to step back, and I'm speaking from my own voice to my council, that I thought that was fair. It was reasonable. I want the town to be sustainable, but I also want that shopping center to be sustainable because it's critical to our future success. So those are really the high points, the summary points of that. Of that agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I did want to share, even though again it might be outside the scope of the commission, but I think it's important to share that and publicly state kind of the history, because there's been a lot of, and understandably, just some misunderstandings about what the development agreement meant. Why would the council or the commission agree on a development agreement and approve it before you've even heard the project? And it wasn't. It was they needed to know that the council would endorse, at the end of the day, that term sheet. But now that term sheet is before you. It's gone through the process. The project is before this commission. And if it ultimately ends up back in front of the council, then they would consider that at that point. And the applicant knows if it gets to at the end of the day, to that term sheet, that the council has endorsed it. And that's a summary background of 2 years of a lot of hard work on everybody's side in this room, and I'm happy to answer any questions related to that. Thank you.
Very succinct summary of a lot of stuff. So I will ask the other commissioners if they have any questions for Todd. Charles?
No, thank you. I think that in the packet, that there's really great documentation of that entire process, and it's available to everybody, so I think that's wonderful.
Jennifer?
No, thank you.
Dr. Bundy?
No.
Ms. Phyllis?
No question, but I do want to emphasize something you didn't. Currently, the lease is $10,000 a year, and we're going to $320,000 per year, and I think we ought to emphasize that.
I have a couple of questions, very brief, though.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
On the, we're gonna, for Todd itself.
Yeah,
Okay,
well,
not-
yeah. Does anybody have any idea how many cars approximately park out there now on a given weekend or whatever? Because it's not full, like that would be full, the layout of the lot, but I'm just curious if anybody has any idea. No.
You did, go ahead.
Oh, I always imagine Maastricht probably has a good idea. I know they're doing some aerial counting. At one point, it was counted 455.
445.
445, thank you.
And that was at the
spaces.
maximum amount.
Right.
Obviously, that's during.
That's not what it gets used at, no.
No,
I'm
no,
just- yeah, okay.
obviously you go out there and it's
Right.
not used to that. I think if we may have some better estimates, perhaps, based on observations from our consultants, but we've all, I think, just as familiar with it. Certain times of year it gets used, but most of the other times it's not.
The only other question I had for Todd while he's sitting at a microphone, right, and that has to do with this idea that many people have broached about traffic study or the participation of the applicant in a traffic planning capacity at the town. So at various times, council meetings and so forth, there's been the idea that there's going to be some sort of town traffic something, right? Some sort of commission, some sort of traffic enhancement or something. And are you able to speak to any of that at this time, or what's happening relative to the crossing, or,
Sure.
you know, how we might?
A couple things, really quick, just from the police authority days of the use of the gravel lot outside of the November and December holiday times of year, it's a handful. And it's a handful of cars that are out on the gravel lot on any given time. And really, it's not because of overflow parking, it's just because they're either walking the paths or, I think that was your question before I wanted to.
Well, in part, yeah.
So it's a couple things with the traffic. So one, we're about to, over the next 12 months, look at doing a town-wide traffic study tied to Larkspur and looking at all the major arteries and really trying to do a big picture kind of view of how how everything works now that we have the Tamridge residents starting to be filled, and we're looking at a big-time traffic study. I'll tell you that the overcrossing between the two shopping centers, that is not in the consideration right now as a town manager or staff of something we're considering. I think that's a much broader conversation that really starts with the two property owners of the shopping centers. But what I'll tell you on the other side of it, and it's really exciting, the TAM overcrossing. Absolutely. We just budgeted $120,000 to help with some initial studies. We're working closely with the team, as Pat Ravazio spoke about today. That's our priority, to really look at enhancing that and bringing the east side to the west side of Corte Madera together. And so that is our focus. And we're kind of excited about what's going on. That group has really made some progress. They meet monthly. Staff is part of that. And that's our focus.
Right.
And so as we move forward I don't see it that we're positioned to delay a project due to that, because of the timing of it and the condition of approval. I wouldn't recommend that for consideration at this point. I think we're still in the design phases. We're still waiting for Caltrans to do their studies over the coming months. But we're excited on the funding opportunities that are there with Caltrans, actually. So that is a priority for us.
Great.
So.
And are there any study funds set aside for the overall study, or for any other sort of traffic commission creation, or anything that you've got on your radar for the long-term outlook on traffic in the town?
Yeah, so the initial, the bigger picture study right now, I know that we have $350,000 set aside from some of the other projects that have happened in town. And we'll be taking that to council probably January, February, as again, we get situated. I think we wanted Tamridge to get occupied and then really look at a town-wide and then tie Larkspur to that. There were some funds from the Tamridge project that were also in agreement with Larkspur in advance, are, you know, for consideration for them, that we would include them in a traffic study to help us. And I think we go hand in hand in many ways.
Right.
And so,
Is there any discussion as how you might involve merchants in this planning? Have you had any of those discussions?
we haven't. I mean, I think that's initially working with Adam and staff, and I'd be happy to, with the commission, of any recommendations that you may have for us. I think we're.
Well, we're hearing, you know, that they're impacted by whatever, or they take advantage of whatever traffic study and/or elements are added to the traffic pattern assist, whether buses, shuttles, or bicycle bridges, whatever, they get impacted by all of that, so.
I know that Councilmember Andrews and all of the council members and the mayor first are very interested in this type of study, and so I will bring that to their attention and ask for a potential ad hoc committee and really kind of vet this before we get going. I think it's critical. It's one of our #1 issues in town.
Right.
It's a big issue in every project. I'll tell you, we have the funding. It's now how do we put the process in place.
So
I
that's
hear you.
exciting, and
Yeah.
I hope the public gets to hear that that's where the town is headed. So, you know, that's very much on your mind and everybody else's, so.
Thank you.
Great. Anybody else? No? Okay.
I did have something with the parking. I know for, yeah.
I'm sorry, I would like to, I think, complete the staff
Yeah.
report, which we haven't done yet. I think Macerich is also going to speak about the gravel lot, and then we're going to move into public comment and questions. If it's for, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, that's
Commissioner,
great.
But I think if it's for.
You know what I'm going to
if it's
say,
for-
so.
Yeah, and I think absolutely, if there's questions for our consultants, they can come up and address a lot of other, I know there's a lot of other questions that.
Thanks for
Commissioners have.
permitting a detour. I just wanted to get that on the table, whatever that was. So, Phil? Yeah.
Actually, that's, you know, that wraps up the staff presentation regarding the gravel lot, the general plan amendment, the zoning amendment, and the development agreement. So the next thing on our agenda was to have the applicant give their presentation regarding the gravel lot.
Absolutely.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is John Steckley. I am a development manager with Macerich. I just want to say before I give my brief comments about the gravel lot, both Giancarlo and I have been up here. We're both headquartered out of our main offices in Santa Monica, and we've been up here for, I've been up here for, coming up here for about a year and a half, Giancarlo for a longer period of time. And I think speaking on both of our behalfs, we've really enjoyed getting to know everyone in the community. It's become apparent that the people that live here, that shop at our center, care deeply about, you know, not only the town of Corte Madera, but they care about the village. They care about the vibrancy of the village. They care that it reflects, you know, the culture here, the style of the lifestyle here, and you know, I think that's just been something that we've had to consider this whole project. So to that end, this is probably not the the sexiest part of the project, but it's critically important to this project. And we've heard a lot of comments about parking from community members. Obviously, some concerns, and we feel like we've tried to incorporate and listen to those concerns as much as possible. But the gravel lot is really unique. I think Todd did a very good job of explaining the history of Macerich and our predecessor Han in regard to the gravel lot, and then Phil, of course, did a good job of explaining what it will be in the future if this project is approved. But it really is a community resource. I think for us, we want to continue to emphasize that this is going to be this is public land. While we will be getting the benefit of using it as our parking, it will continue to be part of this community. We will only be able to use it for parking, and there are a number of things that we heard from the community that we incorporated into the design. So just starting down the list, one of the big issues that we heard from the center about parking at the center overall was people in the community didn't like compact spaces. No one likes a compact space. So all of the spots at the gravel lot will be 8.5 feet wide. I know it says compact spaces, but that is because it's 18 feet long. So that will be a universal standard across the whole gravel lot. In the process of building or creating the improvements on the gravel lot, we heard from community members that there is an environmentally sensitive area directly adjacent to it, and that is critical. That is something that cannot be that is something that cannot be replaced here in Corte Madera, and they did not want to have impact there. So we are working. Well, our plans minimize. I can't say no impact. I do have no impact up there, but there will be no impact beyond what is currently there. If you read in the staff report, there are a few areas where, and Phil did a good overlay of it, where there will be some impact into the buffer, but that is something that we really incorporated into our design, and we know is important for the community. To that end, it's an eco-friendly design. Right now, I was just there this afternoon. There was a semi parked out there. There were two semis parked out there, and we all know that there's oil and other bad stuff that comes out of cars, and right now that's flowing directly into the marsh. That will be collected and will flow through. That will flow through a flow-through planter that will go down the center of the lot, and there will be. It will also flow into 3 rain gardens that are at the corners of the improved lot. Landscaping. There's a great plan over there. There are no trees out there right now. There will be 56 trees. It's going to totally soften up the lot. And then lighting. In our conversations with Marin Audubon and others, a big concern was, will there be light spillage? And we're working with our design. We've already come up with a design where we think that it's going to minimize any light spillage into the marsh and into the surrounding communities up onto the hill. And that will be LED lighting. That will be energy efficient, and we will be programming dimmers or motion detectors or anything that will help minimize the impact of the lighting there. And then I'm sure these are some questions that the Planning Commission will have, and I know it's detailed in the documents you have in front of you. But we're cognizant of the parking demand. We're looking to get the gravel lot completed, improvements completed early in the construction process. We hope this will alleviate some of the impact that will result from the construction of the RH building. And we're really looking to reuse as much material that we have out there right now in the construction of the lot. So we're planning to reuse the existing gravel out there to the extent possible, and really trying to minimize the export of materials from the gravel lot. And then kind of the two qualitative things that obviously are not apparent when you look at the plan. You know, hearing the feedback from the community again, we know this has been a community gathering place. We know that the circus has been there. The Marin General Hospital has had a gala out there. So if you take a look at the plans when you get a moment, we've programmed the left side of the lot to accommodate certain events. We've overlaid in our design process. We overlaid the footprints of those events to see how they function with the landscaping and lighting. And of course, the development agreement will allow for a certain number of community events out there. And then the last point I want to make, you know, it's going to be a safer place, and there will be lighting, there will be security patrols by our center's, the village's team, and we think it's going to be a nice improvement. It's just parking, but we know it's important to the community. So, again, thank you, and we appreciate you hearing our comments regarding the project.
Okay, anybody else from the Mesa Ridge RH team going to speak to the gravel lot? Okay. Do you guys have any questions for the applicant about the gravel lot?
No, it's been very thorough, the presentation.
Dr. Bundy?
I have some questions, but I could wait for public comment.
Okay. Jennifer?
No comments.
I will have comments, but I'd also like to hear from the public.
Okay. Very good. So that means that we'll head into the second section of public comment for the remainder of the public here who has chosen to wait for this moment. So I see a lot of staff, but who here would like to make a comment on the parking lot? I see a lonely hand. All right.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Bloomling, and I live on the east side of Corte Madera on Paradise Drive. I'm astonished to see that I'm the only person who has indulged myself in reading the EIR and poring over the plans for the gravel lot. So I hope I can make my comments brief. I'm sort of neutral on the project. I have some concerns about how it will impact the small town feel of Corte Madera, but I do think it's a beautiful design, and I'm all for sort of moving forward. I'm all for progress. My comments about the gravel lot specifically are that I really would like the design to be women-friendly and safe. My big concern about having the parking over on one side of the road and having the position of the new building in the middle of the parking lot is that it's going to impede a lot of lines of sight. It's going to make the space much less open and visible. And I think probably much less safe and secure for women generally. And so I would really like that to be taken account of in the design, to sort of include more visibility, address the issues of compartmentalization that will come around the lot by having more security patrols or even a permanent presence on the other side of the road. I think the idea of fencing the lot is a great idea to stop people from straying in, from a sort of 360-degree perspective. And I would really like to see some very good lighting in there so that women can feel safe walking across there by themselves. I do wonder if, the added impact of all of this, with all of us being as lazy as we are, will mean that valet parking will become a permanent fixture. I strongly suspect that it will. And again, I would encourage a commitment from Mesa Ridge to provide that for free on a permanent basis, if that becomes the case. And also to sort of explore some creative solutions that might encourage shoppers to park on the other side, like a drop-off locker where people could leave their shopping while they are shopping in the center, and then they could swing by in their car and pick it up on their way back. Those sorts of things that might be creative solutions to the problem of having to split the parking lot up. And the other concern that I would have is an obligation to ensure that parking remains free. I know that at Cherry Creek in Denver, parking is now required to be paid parking. I'm not in any way sort of blaming that on restoration hardware, but it is an outcome that has happened there, with a corresponding dip in sales tax. And so I think that's an important factor to consider here, because it's something that a lot of towns are having to sort of think about going forward. And it's something I would not like to see adversely impact Corte Madera's sales tax revenue. My time is up.
Thank you
Can
very
I have
much.
an extra 1 minute since I'm the only person talking?
No, thank you very much. You've expressed quite a bit and very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else who would like to contribute? No, seeing none. Then we'll bring it back up here for questions of the applicant relative to the parking lot or anything else. So, Adam.
No, I think, just to be clear, so what we're trying to do, we haven't had any comments or questions from the planning commission regarding any aspects of the project, so I would imagine the commission will open it up at a certain point for all of those questions and comments for staff, consultants, applicant on those items. We haven't quite finished, but I think staff's available right now to do that for everybody.
Or did you
So
want
I
to?
think it's just, I just want to make clear,
Right.
if we're opening it up to comment and question, we should do it also for the RH building and so on.
Okay.
Some of the stuff we heard
Yeah.
in the first half of the presentation.
I wanted to just do a couple of parking lot issues and see
fine.
if that's fine, and then delve into the rest of it, so.
That's fine. No, I
Yeah.
just don't want to forget the
No.
first part. That's all.
Right, absolutely not. How could we? So, but that said, now that we've had a lone commenter, Phyllis, do you have any questions for the staff or the applicant regarding the parking lot?
I just wanted to clarify something. Stan, you did say that the parking lot, the gravel lot would be used basically for the employees, that's where the employees would go before it would be public parking. Is that correct?
Would you step up to the microphone, please, yeah?
Not that I don't want them to be safe also, but I wanted to just verify that.
The plan would be, at the very least, during weekends and the holiday shopping season, when the parking lot is full, that our employees would park in what is now the gravel lot, yes. I'm not sure we would ask an employee on a rainy night in February to park across the street, but certainly on the weekends and between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we would make that employee parking.
So is that sort of the basic statement of a potential condition that we could place on it, that during weekends and holidays that we could, you would agree that employees would be required to park in the gravel lot?
I don't get to make those decisions.
Okay, all right, got it, all right, so,
If not weekends, at least, what we call it, holiday times when there is, significant use.
Okay.
That I'd
Yeah.
like to see that. I also wanted to be sure on the gravel lot that that lighting is very, very important. Well, I think it's important throughout the entire shopping center. But I want to see it, dark sky. I also want to see it dimmed when the stores are closed, but I want to see some kind of a motion detector that if somebody gets in that lot, the lights go up. I think a very good example of how to do very good lighting within a parking lot is what was just done at Town Center. They really went out of their way to do lighting that did not interfere with the neighbors around and yet would brighten when needed. And I'm sure we're going to write into it the times that lights would have to be dimmed, when stores are closed, et cetera.
yes.
And
Is that all you want to?
the presentations tonight were so good. I feel so many of my questions were answered already.
Dr. Bundy, do you have any questions about the gravel lot or any commentary?
Yes.
Or things you want clarified?
Yes.
We'll get into commentary later, yeah.
In regard to the flow-through planters that are going to be in the gravel lot as well as in the new parking adjacent to RH, are they also going to be, have some irrigation in them so that during the summer, there'll be some vegetation that's growing? I didn't see that in the diagram.
So I'm going to put our civil on the spot here. I'm sorry, Felicia. I know the answer to this, but she's the technical person here, and I don't want to screw this up. So at least give you a better answer than my answer.
John's just giving me an opportunity to stretch. Thank you.
Just state your name for the,
Felicia Dean, civil engineer with Kimley Horn and Associates.
Thank you.
The flow-through planters will have drought-tolerant plantings that are specific for this purpose, and yes, they will be irrigated.
Okay. The other issue that Sarah mentioned and others have talked about is the security issue, and that's one of our biggest problems in Corte Madera is break-ins at cars parked at the mall. Are there plans for security camera to be installed, and therefore there would be signage that a security camera is there, which would hopefully deter any criminal activity? And perhaps it could be a security camera that could function in very low light.
Yes, there are plans for security cameras to be installed at the gravel lot.
Okay.
Yes.
The question of the 4-foot fence has been brought up. I think primarily Audubon Society was concerned about dogs straying through from the lot. I know that was listed as an option. Can we have it as a stipulation that if the fence is not installed, that if there are problems with dogs or people going on to the buffer zone, that a fence could be installed at a later date?
Yes, certainly. I mean, as you pointed out, the objective of including the fence as an option was because, certain members of the community had opinions regarding having the fence being installed when we do improve the lot, and then others had differing opinions. So yes, certainly that's an option if it does become a stipulation.
Okay, and thank you. Also had a question about trying to not remove as much material as possible, and I appreciate the effort to reuse as much as you can.
Thank you.
Jennifer.
I think I just have a few operational questions. Probably
Relative to the lot?
For the, no,
Okay.
not relative to the lot. I thought we were
Okay.
talking about both the building and the lot.
Yeah, we
right
will,
now.
but I just want to get through the lot right now. Anything
I
else
have
on
no
the?
questions on the lot.
Charles.
So mine's not directly about the lot, it's about parking in general. And it had to do with the construction phasing. And I actually had a question for our consultant. In the EIR, you identify, basically the different deficiencies that happen during Christmas, based on different methods of calculating deficiencies. And the duration of construction is 11 to 22 months. And I didn't understand from the documentation what the deficiency is above and beyond what you've already identified due to the construction. And so it just made me want to know more information about that. Is it that in general, the level of service decreases and there's 700 deficient spaces at Christmas, or are we talking about 1,000, including when they go into construction, because of the 160 plus then the staging area that's next to it, which doesn't have a description of the spaces that are lost in those staging areas. So I just wanted further clarification of that, and then also, and usually in these processes, I wouldn't be interested in what the mitigation measures are for the construction during construction with the parking. But I felt like I wanted an understanding of what some of the options would be. Usually that falls on the purview of the Public Works Director, but because it's become a public issue and I've heard lots of people bring it up as a concern, it might be an opportunity to discuss it in a more public forum, what the solutions are. And if those solutions are, work during the construction phases, could that be implemented down the line to help the community overall with with, saturation during those peak times. And then also, can the development team work with staff to understand how that might evolve into future transportation initiatives with the city, but using that as like kind of a, not just a patch to mitigate that moment, but use that fee time investigation for whether there's a future for that overall. And so I guess that's my question to the staff and to the consultant.
I'll try to, maybe I'll start and then hand it over to the experts. So I think there are two parking management plans that, or there's one management parking plan that is required in the EIR, and that is a plan that the applicant will need to provide to the town. It will be reviewed by town staff, including Public Works, on how the applicants will manage parking during construction. So that's during construction of the building and during construction of the lot, whether they happen together or at different times.
Right, and then whether it's the 11 months or the 22 months, which could go into one or two shopping seasons. Right?
Sure. So, yeah, we would, that plan, if there was a concrete commitment that it's going to be 11 months, then that plan would have to identify how those 11 months are going to be parking is going to be managed during those 11 months. If the plan is 22 months, then, or, the schedule is 22 months, then that plan will have to show that in detail as well. So that's one aspect of managing parking during construction. Another question you raise is managing parking during the holidays.
Right, and whether that can be factored in, is that part of the analysis of the construction management plan is that there's an increased load during those times, or is it for the overall duration of the operation across the year?
So the EIR does not, the EIR does not specify a mitigation for managing parking during the holidays. The document that your packet does have a parking demand analysis, which Fair and Pierce did, which is analyzing, what they think, doing 3 different methodologies, what they think the parking demand is going to be during the holidays, and interesting enough, what it is today. And but there is no set mitigation requirement for that in the document currently. So I'll leave it there and hand it over to Bob, if you have any, or Matt, if either one of you has something to add.
So while Fair and Peers get up here, just to reiterate what Phil said is, during the environmental studies, there was no project impact that required a mitigation measure for parking at any other, for a parking management plan other than during the construction period. So that's the only mitigation measure that's mandated and required under the CEQA. And we understand you're asking if the applicants are willing to do, have looked at that or considered. But
Right,
just
and
to
what the
clarify the
solutions
record.
are and, how that's constructed, because there was no discussion of how that mitigation measure will
Right.
manifest.
Go ahead.
Well, I think Bob and Matt maybe be able to talk about some of the potential solutions that were discussed at either in part of construction, and then we could talk about any specific questions that you have or concerns or questions about how to implement that going forward.
Okay.
So there's a distinction, of course, as you know, between a mitigation measure and that is something that has to be complied with during the project. There's certain triggers and things like that. And then there's also project conditions that are not necessarily part of the mitigation monitoring plan that aren't triggered by CEQA. And we certainly don't want to blur those two things and keep those separate.
Okay.
And while these guys are speaking, it says that they want to install the parking foremost and get that out of the way if possible, so that the impact of the loss of losses in the main lot is mitigated just by the addition of this lot. I read that in the staff report or somewhere in there. So, and that they want to do it concurrently, so you go ahead, please, finish.
Well, I guess there are two things. One, in terms of the construction parking management plan, because we didn't know exactly when the start month was and how long the duration of the project would be. That's why we have the measure in there which says during the construction, once that's defined, and that would include the holiday season. So to the extent construction's happening over one or possibly two holiday seasons, that would be part of the construction parking management plan that would say in these given months, and there are going to be months where there would be no impact because during some of the during the non-holiday season months, you have weekday demand that's around 60% of the, and that's just the paved. That doesn't even include the gravel lot. So, and on weekends it gets closer to 90%. So, and in the non-holiday season, so there are going to be windows of time during construction where there won't need to be, depending upon the sequencing of how everything's happening, there won't need to be any mitigation. But there may be months when there will need to be some kind of accommodation, and that. There was mention of the use of Redwood High School as an example of a way you could have employees during a window of time during construction. During the holiday season, you could have them park off-site and shuttle back and forth. So those are some of the examples that could be incorporated in a construction parking management plan, which would address all those months for the duration of construction. And that's the CEQA issue. The CEQA issue is what's the effect of construction. Parking in and of itself for operations, not a CEQA issue, and that's why it wasn't explicitly addressed in terms of impact and mitigation in the document.
Okay.
But there is.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know if that.
Well, so is it? So I guess.
But the same measures that I think you could apply during construction sequence could be applied during the holiday season for operations. In other words, the same type of measures would apply. And
right.
And
But it sounds like the mitigation measures that they've already done during those times might be applicable again.
Yes.
My question
Exactly.
more was, if this is a regional draw store, is there shuttles that go over to Larkspur Ferry and to the SMART train to try to encourage people to not do car trips? Are there solutions like that? And I didn't see those in any of the documentation, but are those possibilities? Would that really have any impact? Is that something that could benefit the whole community in the long term too?
I think those are all great strategies. We
That's
didn't want to be
outside of the purview of this application.
Well, we didn't want to
Really.
be prescriptive and say, do this strategy or that strategy, because depending on the time of year and a whole lot of other variables, they know more about their customers than we do. And so you really want something that's targeted at the customer's employees at that particular time. So we didn't want to be prescriptive in saying, these are the strategies, only that you needed to develop a strategy that would make sure you accommodate the parking demand.
And how this, and just how this would play out, I just, because I think this is part of the question, is trying to conceptualize how this plays out a little bit, is at the time of a building permit, again, when there's some more definition about the construction schedule and how the sequencing of events, we would expect that there would be a documentation of a potential strategy with proposed measures. Perhaps one of those is on weekends when the ferry parking lot or something else is not full, that's used, and people, I don't know, there's a variety of things that could be done, and I think Bob's identified a few of those in the draft mitigation and some others. That would come to staff. Staff would look at that, and I think we would also look back with our consultants, look back for their take on whether or not those sorts of measures at those particular times would be adequate to address the identified sort of, whether it's during construction, the impact to the lack of supply of adequate parking during construction, and then furthermore over potentially the holiday season moving forward into, if that's something as well that the commission thinks is valuable moving forward as well. So, I mean, again, one is the construction related is more of a mandated CEQA requirement at this point. Mm-hmm. Sort of the ongoing measures that would address holiday time in parking is not a CEQA issue, but it's a sort of a conclusion as stated in a parking
But
demand
it sounds
analysis.
like some part of the CEQA construction management will
It
address
definitely-
what the parking demands are during the holiday season, shopping seasons. Is that?
Yes, I think that's what you're saying, because the likelihood is that it's going to bridge over a holiday season
It
during
would
construction.
certainly all be applicable. Everything that's applied in construction season during those months would be applicable later, maybe on a different scale, in terms of how much needs to be done, but certainly the types of strategies would all be relevant.
Yeah, these are questions, not, proposals or anything. It's just, that's why I asked the parking experts.
Well, to your point, Charles, I just want, in the letters from Caltrans, or who is it says that the town needs to, shall or needs to develop a transportation demand management program?
Well, there are,
I forget where I
So
read
they
it.
requested it,
Yeah,
but when the studies, again, the environmental studies didn't trigger any
Not in that,
requirement, so it
Right.
can't be mandated under CEQA, and there's no mandate to
No mandate.
impose that. But that's certainly, part of Planning Commission's discussion and recommendations to council about whether or not you think that any of this needs to be addressed as project conditions.
All right, I feel like we've beat it.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
thank you so, one of the other questions I had about parking, there was a discussion about valet. And I think valet is a certain type of customer. Another one I thought is with the remoteness of the lot, have you ever seen in a shopping center where people are allowed to leave their stuff at a closer curbside, go retrieve their car, and then come back and pick up during holiday seasons when they have a lot of packages and stuff like that? And because at the Restoration Hardware Junction, right, there's a lot of those kind of pick-up, drop-off curbs. Have you ever seen a facilitation with like a staffed position or some way to monitor and allow drop-off? And would that be something that would be implemented as part of that? It's just curious, so there was that state. Then I guess the other thing about parking is I didn't see how the building's being maintained. It's very clear on the plans where, Nordstrom or, have trucks, deliveries, and trash, and I didn't understand that in the plans, and so I just want to understand. Now, I understand that you probably have a warehouse that is a design center, that you're not selling furniture out of there, but with a food cafe, there's going to be a lot of, food waste, trash pickup, and then also the moving of furniture in and out of, can you explain on the plans where that would be and its impact on the parking lot?
Yeah, please, we might as well get out of the way. You guys do it at midnight with elves, right? No, I'm just kidding.
I'll let Wayne go ahead and discuss, the overall siting of the building and the trash location and pickup. But I will mention that only 2% of our business is cash and carry. And once we do merchandise the building to open, there are floor resets, but they happen maybe once a year, and it's not a lot of furniture. We don't switch out the whole gallery. So really, there'll be a big effort in the beginning when we're opening the gallery, but as in the future, we're not seeing a lot of furniture coming in and out. It's mostly our clients who are, have things shipped to their home and they want to return. So most of our UPS is really getting returns back to our distribution centers. So there's not a lot of movement of big trucks, which is understandable. I mean, it's big furniture, big items. So
Thank you.
Sure. And then in regard to servicing as the gallery functions, there's not much daily trash on the retail side of things. But in regards to the food and beverage component, on the east end of the plans, or the east side that you're facing out in the model, right in the center there's there we go. Is there a plan in this presentation? The other side of that. Oh. I can jump to the floor plan.
It's those two large doors in that courtyard.
If you
basically.
take the microphone
It
with
wasn't
you,
labeled, so, it made sense, but it is, the only reason it became on my radar is this idea of doing a flow-through that, that is kind of the front door to a lot of people as they drive into the center, right? And then it's probably beautiful doors that cover it and everything like that, but it,
Well, there's two things I want to highlight on that. There, in my rushed commentary, I forgot to mention that you can see these the black doors on the first floor there, the 6, 3, and 3. That's actually mirrored on the east end of the parking. So those are all operable doors and intended to, they can function as flow through. So pedestrians could flow around the building, through the building, in the building. So that's the intention. That's the
good to
intention
hear.
of the
So
design.
thanks for that clarification.
Now the central component, the trash or the service area, I'll call it. For example, in Chicago, the Chicago Gallery, it's a very tight site, and so the trash is handled in the off hours, early mornings, food deliveries, trash in and out, and so it's just a matter of making it disappear behind the curtains.
Okay, good.
Sorry to
that's
say.
important from a design, design impact. Like, what is the?
Yeah, there'll be like a holding area within the design, so we'll keep the trash and then make it disappear when nobody's looking.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Phyllis?
I just wanted to ask Todd a question. That traffic study you spoke of that you'll be doing, will that take in any aspects of alleviating some of the excess parking problems that we may have? I think it might be, well, like you mentioned, using the possibility of using the ferry terminal, that could alleviate traffic, coming on those roads. If that could be looked at as part of it, at least finding sites where excess traffic could park.
Yeah, I mean, as part of any, it depends, you sort of lay out the issues and the problems.
Well.
And identify the problems at the beginning of the process, and then based on that, design strategies to deal with those identified traffic or parking issues. So, in this particular case, obviously, that's sort of what we're talking about here with respect to the parking shortfall, and therefore
Yes.
designing a strategy around certain particular times where that may
Yes.
happen on the holidays or on a Saturday between Thanksgiving and
Yeah.
probably and New Year's.
But that's the
For the-
construction part. I'm talking
As far
about
as-
long-term,
Well, as
if that could
Sure,
be
I
addressed.
mean, I think as part of a long-term overarching strategy, that same sort of
Yeah.
process may very well come out with some of those strategies with shuttles or increasing, public transportation or whatever it may be, that can help alleviate sort of broader issues. And school traffic, obviously, we know is one of those, and school buses has already been discussed with town residents and by the town council. So, yeah, absolutely.
That's coming. It's coming down the road then, yeah. That takes into account new developments in place, new traffic flows, all of that. So,
Just for process that may be helpful, I'm happy to come back and work with you to put it on the agenda, just have a quick conversation of some things that you would like to see considered, and I can then bring that to council and just have a good, thoughtful kind of dialogue and conversation about this before we spend money, and,
Yes.
we want to do it the right way, obviously, so
yeah,
I appreciate that.
We've
Thank you.
talked about it for years. Okay. So, that said, anybody else want to talk about this now before we turn it back over to Phil? Do you have some more you want to address?
Well,
Bob?
are we at the point where we want to talk about the building at this point?
No, staff has to continue with the presentation.
Okay.
We don't really have to. We're at the very end. I think what we have left is we were going to obviously mention that our staff report, we did recommend approval of the application, and so we're happy to answer any questions about that. I think it's important, though, to focus, obviously, on the specific entitlements that Phil mentioned earlier in the presentation. There's findings associated with many of them. We've laid that out, with respect to the general plan and the zoning amendment for the gravel lot. Those are laid out in the staff report as the reasons why staff was able to make not necessarily specific findings, but found that was actually appropriate to make those general plan and zoning amendments for the gravel lot. Phil went over that, but really it's based on the historical use of the site, the reality of how it's been used, the permit history from the town's perspective, how we've been granting permits and how it's been used for permits for community events. Obviously, the ongoing use, I think we got into also this discussion about really this ultimately we're talking about a discussion over not if there should be more parking, it's a question of where that parking goes. And in this particular case, I think staff, we felt that so in that case, we're talking really about a structured garage that is going to allow for more parking in the village, or something that's already exists as a parking lot. It's there, it's actually required to be parking under the 95 agreement, and therefore it's preferable in staff's view to maintain that going forward, or use that as a parking resource that it is, rather than sort of getting into the structured parking at this point. Maybe down the road, that's something that needs to be considered, but at this point, it seems like it's able to be avoided. And in order to do that, staff felt that we really should and need to change the general plan map to reflect a proper general plan land use designation and zoning designation that allowed for parking uses, not only for the public, but for the commercial uses at the village. And that's consistent with its functional, connection that it has with the village. So
The legal agreement for that lot's in place before the 2009 designation, and it needs to be put in compliance essentially, or agreement.
Yeah, I would
with each
argue
other.
that it's actually should be made consistent with
Right.
the actual uses that have been there, are there, and are proposed to remain there going forward.
Great. So, Phil, did you have anything else?
Just the final two slides are basically, like Adam was saying, recognizing that staff is able to make all of the findings for the various entitlements that are in this application. General plan amendment, rezoning, development agreement for the gravel lot, for the building itself, conditional use permit for the cafe, and for both the building and the gravel lot, precise development plan amendments, and design review. So all those findings are outlined in the attached resolution, which is attached to your packet. And because we're able to make all those findings, staff is recommending that the commission, or basically providing two options to the commission. One is that the staff recommends that the planning commission, after viewing the staff report and attachments and the environmental impact report, public comment, and after evaluating the entire record, either one, adopt the resolution, which would be recommending to the town council certification of the EIR and approval of the entitlements listed above, or listed in the staff report. Or option number two is if additional information and deliberation is needed, that the commission continue this public hearing to a date certain. So those are two options, and you can also create your own.
And Phil, do you have the list of all the findings?
I do.
At the
Yeah,
end?
and
Yeah,
the
so I think we
findings
have,
are listed.
as normal, we have the slides
Yeah,
that
so
list
all the findings for all the different entitlements are listed here.
And the findings were in the proposed resolution,
Yes.
starting
Correct.
with the EIR and then all of the proposed project entitlements.
So with that, I will then go back to our commissioners and ask them if you have any further questions for these gentlemen, staff, or the applicant relative to the building. So Bob, you raised that sector.
Yeah, just following up on what Charles was asking, could we show the first floor floor plan?
Might take you a while, huh?
Yeah. Well, the concern that I had in following up on the question about where, trash is going to be taken out, it looked like that little alcove behind the gates, which looks like an entrance but really isn't because it only goes into the kitchen. I would assume that, that would be where, trash would accumulate. And I'm concerned that it may not be adequately screened as a result of this appearing to be an entrance and people, walking up to it. And just wanted to understand how that little alcove was going to be used. And I assume that deliveries would come through there, but they would be early in the morning or late at night.
Just for the record, Bob, and the applicant can
Could you go
confirm
back
this,
one
but
page?
there are a pair of sliding doors there to close that off.
Look at the elevation, if you go back to that, it shows a solid.
See those?
Mhm.
That's the plan, you can see the gates are split open, in front of that on the top of the street.
But there's no intention for anybody coming to the building to walk in through there and go in through the kitchen.
Correct. And if you look at the colored one, you can kind of see it's shown here as a wooden.
Closed, wooden door,
But they
yeah.
can, the other doors.
It's
to the
open air
side
to above.
Encouraged
Okay.
to
So
people to walk into the
is
building.
The
But
other
there are no
doors are
doors there.
open.
Yes, to the sides, those three bays
Yeah.
to the side are all doors.
Can you just clarify
They
again?
are-
I think you guys said this, but the thought is that the 6 glass doors are generally open.
So these
And
are
so people coming,
open doors.
parking to the east of the building and walking
windows.
towards the mall
they're doors.
could come in
They're
through
actu-
those
they're floor to
doors, walk
ceiling
through the
doors.
store,
Ceiling doors.
and be on the other side. Correct? Okay. Did you follow that? Did you hear that?
No, there was too much going on.
I'm sorry, I interrupted.
I
but-
guess I need to understand how you plan to have, I thought most people were going to come through the main entrance on the west side of the building, but you're planning on having people just coming in through the doors that are potentially going to be open?
They have an open pocketbook, they can come in wherever they want.
Adam, for safety.
The intention is that our customers would enter through the west entry as a main entry. But as you can see, we have these loggias to the west, to the east and west portions of the buildings, and those will have glass doors that will be operable and unlocked during business hours. So anybody parking to the east of our building or to the other portions of our building are welcome to circulate through those loggias and traverse the whole, site.
Okay, so.
It would
the-
just not be that central area to the east. That would be
Will look
closed
like
off for
closed
deliveries and
wooden
trash.
doors that have been locked.
That's your dock, for lack of a good
Exactly,
better-
and that's why we've chose to make that solid, so that'll help be a signifier if everything else is transparent. That solid portion will hopefully deter people from approaching a trash and delivery area. But
Yeah.
that's the
Okay.
idea.
And
Yeah.
that be open from above? Will people on the roof decks look down on trash bins or?
We hope so. Actually, do better than that, but.
Yeah.
It's not a part of our floor area.
It's not a part of our floor area. It is open to air, but hopefully within that enclosed courtyard, we will find a way to enclose our trash so that it's not, giving off any odors. We of course don't want that to have. We don't want to have those odors for our business, and that it's sightly. That we're not having unsightly views.
I just went through it at SFO. They have concerns with the public and interaction with the and so they use ozonators to help mitigate the trash smells. So, the only reason I brought it up is the other ones that are on the backside, the parking, the amount of population that goes by them is very limited. Is where this would be more exposed. So it would exacerbate the problem if it exists.
Yeah.
Unless you designed it out, right? So.
Exactly.
Can I ask him an operational question?
Okay.
He's good.
So the other question I had was in regard to floodproofing, and I had thought these were going to be floor-to-ceiling windows. I didn't realize they were actually going to be doors that you plan to have open. So I understand the reason for having all the panels that you have to have on there and the training and the drill that goes with that. On the west end of the building, the main entrance, it appeared on the diagrams that the crosswalk was not maybe as significant or as generous as it should be. I understand it's going to be raised up, but I would think that perhaps the width of the crosswalk should be wider, although I'm not sure what the exact width is.
Yeah, I think if we look at the current design that Macerich has put forth for that crosswalk, it's pretty wide.
It's a good size.
I was thinking it should be something in the 12 to 16 feet as far as a width.
Yeah, and I think we'd have to defer to Macerich as they're the ones executing that.
The crosswalk.
You're asking with the crosswalk. And the width of the crosswalk.
Yeah.
So, believe it or not, this is not a 3D plan. But right there this is a speed table. This feature right here is a speed table. So what will happen is when cars come through this part of the ring road, right now there's no impediment, there's no speed bump or anything. What will happen is there's a slight grade, it goes flat, and that's where the accented pavement is, and it's meant to obviously slow cars down. But we'll have to get back to you all on the width there. I think we do have that somewhere, but that's the intention of it.
I just roughly scale it, and it appears to be about 14 feet wide.
Yeah, it's over 12.
Yeah, it looks
Over
like
12.
The question I had on that main entrance, I didn't see any detail on the green wall. Is there some detailing as far as what that green wall appears to be when you look at the west side of the building from a landscape architect standpoint?
So what you're seeing on the west, I think it's the colored elevation.
This stuff?
Yeah.
Looks like you have
Right
fig
here.
growing up there or something.
So you're talking about these right here?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the intent and what we've done in other locations is to do a vine pocket along the base of the wall.
Okay.
So, does that answer the question?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it wasn't clear.
No problem.
I didn't see what that was. The question of the bike racks, is there ability to add more bike racks if it turns out that, there's more bike traffic that comes in? And is there also the option, when you do the layout for this, to have electrical circuitry that could go for more EV charging if that turned out to be needed?
So to answer your question regarding the bike racks, yes. Right now, when you pull up the plan, there's spaces for 12 bike racks, 12 spaces on each side, so 24 total. And Stan and Giancarlo and I discussed this. We have space at other locations of the property where we, if that is something that is required as a condition of this project, we would be able to install further bike racks there. Regarding electric vehicle charging station, of course, we feature in multiple locations actually on the project side as a whole, including the Macy's tract. So yes, I mean that's another feature that brings customers to the center. So we will make that available if it is something it's needed.
Okay.
On the electric vehicles, we're adding actually, I think 9 or 10 spots for Tesla. So that's ongoing right now. I don't know exactly how many electric vehicles we have. I think currently we had about 10 for Tesla, and for the other ones, I don't remember exactly how many, but we are adding some 10 new spots.
Okay.
So you will do that at the store or elsewhere in the project?
We are, the new spots are adjacent to the current Tesla spots.
Okay, so not at the store?
Not at the Restoration Hardware store.
Okay.
Okay. In relationship to the roof garden and the drainage from there, you talked about a gray water system. Is there any thought to rainwater capture and use for irrigation or as part of the gray water system?
I don't know, Felicia, if you have anything to add, but we're still investigating a lot of that right now, so I don't really have a specific to present to you today, but we're looking into it.
And as far as the exterior facade on that roof, you would have scuppers in case there was blockage and need for overflow?
Of course, either the code is overflow drains or scuppers, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. The plantings look very nice around there. I wonder if there could be even more from the standpoint of trees or vegetation, just to blend in with the very nice character of the building.
Nobody's going to stand up and say, we'll put more trees in, or we think more trees, or we didn't put in enough trees, so nobody's going to.
Yeah, you don't want to hide the building.
Yeah, I can
though.
comment on the building site specifically. I can't really comment on Macerch's portion of the site, but we have a substantial amount of trees on site as well as on the roof. And we do tend to, we make the rooftop a feature, as you saw in the slide presentation. So we add a substantial amount of secondary plantings, and our sites are usually lush and full. And we take pride in maintaining that and creating the indoor-outdoor feel. So that really aligns with the large glass open doors, having the plantings and making it a lifestyle center. So that is something that's important to us.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Jennifer.
All right, my question is more operational, because I think that there's been, as you guys have heard already, for the town is, what's in it for us. So I'm curious as to just operationally, the roof garden, the cafe, all of those areas and spaces are generally available to the public to come in, sit upstairs, read their book, have their glass of wine, cup of coffee, whatever. Do you guys, I don't know if you've done this at your other stores, but do you guys ever end up renting out the spaces for events? Like, I know that's not your primary business, but I'm just curious if people use them for like community events or gatherings or things like that.
For this space in general, we definitely, we've had other buildings similar to this where the publics use it as an amenity, and we haven't deterred that at all. We've kind of let things happen organically. Obviously, if there's any security concerns or if people are not really behaving, because we've had incidences on other roofs where people go there and just spend the whole day, and then there's things that happen around that. But as long as people are respectful and enjoying wine or getting a cup of coffee and sitting down on the roof, they're welcome to spend time there. And people, even at Melrose, our property there, people have meetings up there. That kind of happens organically. In terms, sorry, I forgot what your second
Do
question.
you rent out your
Rent
cafe
out-
area
yeah.
as an event space?
We currently do not do that, and that's something that we've batted around back and forth. But I think, we've tried to make it primarily this, not just a retail experience, but a hospitality experience, and we kind of respect the hours around what we currently have in our centers. So for the current time being, that's not being considered.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Jennifer, if I could just add to that, we have addressed that in our community outreach. And oftentimes there's neighborhoods who are concerned about lighting and noise at night. So that's probably the main reason that we don't do it. It's just to be respectful of the neighborhood.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Well, I wouldn't want to touch the liability with a 10-foot pole, but, Corte Madera is known for the flash mob dancing. I'm just kidding. Charles?
Yeah, she kind of, I, as far as the conditional use of the cafe, I just wanted to understand, if we approve the conditional use of the cafe, is it limited to the space that's defined in the plan? Because the model is that, and maybe I but in the video it was that they could flow freely, right? And drink throughout and eat throughout? Is there service throughout, or is it that you get it at a concentrated area and then you're just allowed to go off-site, just like you could do with any restaurant, right? Like, how do I understand that conditional use in relationship to the overall building?
It's a very, actually, it's a very good question. I think going into the application, it's been confined to the cafe use itself, which obviously the kitchen, the wine bar, and then there's 150 seats, I believe, as well in that central portion. So that would be I think 5,800 square feet or so of the restaurant use. Now, I think you're right that the idea would be that would be where the serving likely would be limited to. But if people wanted to take their things and go up somewhere else, that would be my sort of impression of how that conditional use permit would work, as that is sort of the formal restaurant area. From a practical standpoint, I think it's hard to, at least off the top of my head, think about the actual practical differences in impacts or effects.
Right. I mean, I liked that model, so of course I'd like to make sure that it's allowed, and that we're really approving that new kind of retailing experience, and not thinking like, but it blends where, in a mixed use, usually it's really clear, this is the retail, this is
Well, I think it could be it could be explicit in terms of identifying what sort of the model is in terms of that permit. Maybe that goes in as part of any sort of the resolution section of that could identify specifically the operational characteristics of this sort of more unique type of model.
Well, and this is something that I don't know if it's the purview of the planning commission, but the liquor license that would go along with that, right? If it's one,
So-
and what the implications of that would be.
If planning
So-
commission wanted to make that recommendation to council, then obviously staff would explore that in the interim before this moves on, and work with the applicant to better define that and include that in any kind of a resolution, if that's something that the commission as a majority wanted staff to explore and move
also-
forward.
Yeah, also, just to clarify, the project description states a 5,800 square foot cafe. And so the entire document, the entire project has been analyzed based upon a finite size of the cafe. Doesn't mean it can't be changed, but if that's something the applicant wishes to, define, the cafe is larger than 5,800 square feet, and we can take a look.
Well, I think what we're trying to, is what's actually, I think what you're pointing out is there's not, the definition of what a cafe is a little bit maybe different in this case. And so it's sort of drilling down a little bit on what that actually means, and we could definitely explore that. If there are any sort of, I guess the question would be if there are any sort of concerns that would prevent you from making the findings
No, I just
related
need
to it, then we would want to explore that sort of limitations to that model. But if there aren't, then it's a matter of sort of further defining how it's described, I think, in any approval that might be granted. Go ahead.
So let me just say, though, that it says here, the location of the proposed conditional use is within the RH gallery. So
Yes.
it's a space within it. It's not defined per se, right? But we have to either accept that as good enough as a
Right.
statement, that 5,800 square feet is the definition of it in that space. And if you can't get a glass of wine someplace else,
Yeah,
that's the problem.
I like the idea of flowing through the whole space, so I didn't want to have them be
You're
restricted.
saying you didn't want it to be restricted.
Right,
and
I
it
don't
sounds like
actually
it's
want it to be
not.
restricted, so I'm asking, like,
So-
are they, by approving it, is like,
Well,
and
That's
Maybe what we could do is assess with the applicant how strongly do you want your cafe to be larger than 5,800 square feet? And if you do, then we'll sit down and look at, how the document needs to be changed, or if it needs to be changed.
So what I think
for that
I'm hearing,
to
and
take
certainly
place.
we'll want to hear from the whole commission about this as you move through each issue. The cafe, we could certainly work with the applicants to define what that 5,800. What we hear you saying is you don't want to expand the cafe, but you do want to know, do their other, like a liquor license or a permit, allow you to take a glass of wine up on the rooftop? Does it allow you to take a coffee and sit somewhere else? And they may be able to address that now.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that we would like to allow for roaming, and I think in concept and in theory, it would be similar to the E-bar at Nordstrom, where you go ahead and grab a cup of coffee, and, I was there yesterday with my kids, got them hot chocolate, we went upstairs and got shoes. It's that similar, it's that kind of idea where we are limiting the cafe and the food service to that area. But if somebody goes to the pantry and grabs a donut or grabs a cup of coffee or would like a glass of wine, they're able to roam the gallery. And I think we do want to work with the commission and with council to make sure that everyone's needs are met. And we've done this in other jurisdictions and have been successful. But of course, anytime there's alcohol involved, we as a company and as community members and everybody wants to make sure that it's done responsibly and safely, so.
And just for clarification, I think the service, though, remains within that area. It's not,
Correct.
somebody could take something from the cafe and go anywhere they want, but nobody's going from that cafe and serving people.
No, there's no service throughout the gallery. There are like bussers, like currently in Chicago and in Toronto. There's no trash areas up in the roof. So if somebody has a glass of wine, they typically will leave it on like little table and somebody will come through and bus it. We do have trash areas for, if there's paper cups and napkins and things like that, but other than busing, there's no service.
Okay,
up on the roof.
that's helpful.
Yeah.
I think that-
It allows people to roam, and it's an on-premise license, and it's an on-premise consumption and on-premise, all of that. Bill.
I think the
Thank you for
key
the
to it is the word service. The service of preparing the food, just pouring the wine, coffee, handing out donuts, et cetera. It's the service is within the 5,800 square feet. The other part of it is the fact of the roaming, as you use the word, but the idea of service should be emphasized, that word for the 5,800 square feet. And then people go throughout the premises. Any restrictions would be through the alcohol beverage control, not from our approvals.
Well, let me just check in, as it is, then, does anybody have a problem with it as it's written?
No.
No? Okay. Okay.
I would just like staff to work with them to meet that final goal of what they want to do,
Well,
because I think that's a community
They
benefit.
can roam, and it doesn't say there's anything wrong with, that they can't.
If it's not excluded, then it's allowed.
Right.
Okay,
All right.
great.
Is he finished? I have some comments to make.
I don't know if that's true. I'm probably speaking out of
Wait,
turn.
please.
It's on camera, it's okay.
Take your wine upstairs.
If you
Sorry.
can't get service, you don't get it, so.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. We didn't vote at 10 o'clock, but I do want to point out that it's 10:15.
Oh, why don't we?
We actually looked at the rules while you folks were talking.
Yes.
Under the current rules, because the old rules, you actually go till 11 before.
We're
It's only a new item that you have to vote. You have it under the old rules that you're still
know.
under.
Okay.
So you actually get to go till 11 before you decide.
We're following the new rules since we started at 6:30. We decided before the meeting to do that.
Okay, Phyllis, any questions?
Yes, I have a couple of things to ask. I'll start with this. The decomposed granite to be used in the courtyards and the roof terrace ground material. That isn't what the pictures look like. I mean, I don't want to walk through this if I'm upstairs on your roof. I've ruined enough heels over the years. I want to solid something. So what is this meant for? Or is it not clearly labeled?
It's decomposed granite, and we do
Haven't
have
figured
bluestone
out.
pathways that take you into the entrance of the building. So that won't be the primary surface in the, there'll be large portions of it in the entry courtyard, but we'll have a bluestone pathway that will take people into the restaurant. There'll be bluestone pathways throughout the roof. We do have decomposed granite, but there are stabilizers and fines that are included, and we compact it. So it'll be similar to, I don't know if there's any local
like the
examples.
Christmas-
They have it over in Larkspur.
Yeah, like at the Larkspur Landing, there's something very similar there. It's not exactly that, but that loose material is, I would use it to show texture and color and material, but we do compact it and add stabilizers to it. Yeah.
It removes the leather from the sides of your
No, I
heels.
completely agree, and we have this conversation over and over again because our primary clientele shops in heels.
Okay,
Not like
the
me.
roof material. I had asked this when we met with Rod. It says that the metal roofing, I want to be sure it was matted, a matte finish, so
Yeah.
when the sun hits it, there's not a glare.
There's not reflectivity, yeah, and we do have a sample that we brought.
Oh, because it's
Wayne
not
has
here.
it. It's not,
Why'd you hide it and not put it in the rest?
he actually, I asked him when we got here, actually, he forgot it.
Fine. Thank you. Here.
Throw it down here.
Okay.
please. Anything else?
I didn't move some of these
Yeah.
because I think they weigh more than I do, so you'll have to go.
So it isn't
that
matte
way to look at it.
material, or it is a matte material, it's,
That's
it's
what
a
was important.
soft metal, yeah.
I'd like to make some comments on some of the comments that were made by the public. Is this the time to do it? To
what end?
respond, to respond to it. Like, for example, without naming names of people, so we don't get personal. To the people who objected to the placement, who felt that it would be blocking Mount Tam. And if you look at, well, none of these, could you do the one with the parking lot, Phil Syke?
So, let's frame the comments in a sort of
Well-
positive
Well, this
light.
is why I'm saying why the placement works and why the objection, that's why I said I'm not going to use names. But there are, different concerns that were brought up, I think, that we should, in a way, respond to why it might be misinterpreted. Even the ones that show picture upper left-hand corner. You could,
Can you
what,
get that
yeah,
full screen?
okay.
So I can just explain the two images, so this, I zoomed it
Yeah,
out.
okay.
So there are two images. One image is in lower right is
Right.
showing the view from far away,
Yeah.
and then the image provided by the applicant on A25 is shown in
Right.
middle of the parking lot. So clearly the view is different depending on where you're standing.
Yes, but the point of it is those people who have talked about moving it to the edge of the parking lot
To some extent.
on the frontage road, that will block the vision of, you will not see Mount Tam when that building is right, if you're on the frontage road, if you're walking along the Bay Path, if it is, the building is there, you will not see it. So if you want to see Mount Tam, this is the right placement for the building. That was the point I wanted to make on that. I think for those who worried about traffic and parking, that many of the questions were answered during the presentation. As far as the height of the building being too tall, the actual roof of the building, not the garden, doesn't seem to be taller than the stores that are right there, the Gap. And when you do add the roof garden and the trees, it is the height of Nordstrom's, which, and I asked Adam to check, the square footage of Nordstrom's is about 110,000 square feet, which is a lot more than the 46,000 square feet we're looking at. And there was a comment about disrupting the original integrity of the design. My personal feeling is that it adds to the design. and it adds to what is being built today in shopping centers. When I did some research, if you were going to be building the Village today, it would not be a long line of attached stores. It would be stores in clusters or large stores that are individual, and they're all placed near each other with parking surrounding them. So this fits into it. I think someone, it might have been Michael Harlock, who said if there were going to be 3 main points, anchor stores, this would be the place for it. So I think the integrity of the design does not interrupt the original shopping center, adds to it and brings it more into what we're looking at today. And it's not a big block. It is one of the most handsome stores I have seen. I mean, this was done by a world-class architectural firm. People who go up to the wine country rave about Ramsgate Winery being the most attractive of them all. This is the same firm that did Ramsgate. This is something I think we shall all be proud of. And it fits in the shopping center. It uplifts the shopping center into the 21st century. And I think we should keep it in mind. And I realize some people have partial information, and I thought it was important to respond to some of the comments that did not have full information, because after 2.5 years, I think a lot of thinking went into it by the applicant as far as placing the building. I'm sure it was looked at in many positions. There was a comment, and I guess I can't find where I wrote it, about moving it over to the gravel lot. I think that defeats the whole purpose. Because it's no longer integrated into the shopping complex itself.
Very well said, okay. Dr. Bob, anything else you want to say? I have a question for
No.
Todd. Okay. Todd, regarding lighting out there in the lot. So you're a former ossifer. So should the lighting go off or just, at a certain time? What happens out there? If there's a car out there and somebody walks out there, the lights, we can have them put on motion. But from a community standpoint, we want those lights to go off at a certain time, at motion activated. But from a police perspective, what do you want out there?
You mean entirely off, are you asking?
You mean after hours?
Yeah.
When it does, yeah, I think that's fine. I think we would recommend that as well. It doesn't, we have a full view of that lot at night when we go through on our patrols, and it would be a non-issue. So we would recommend the same thing, go to motion sensor.
So they right now, they have those generator lights out there that they go out and turn off at some point, usually, 10, 11 o'clock, something like that. And they're pretty bright and ugly when they're on. But from a safety perspective, if there's nobody in that lot.
Well, I think always you'd like light. Right, you'd always want to light. But we would always defer to the shopping center on that. We have a good relationship and work closely with them. Go ahead.
I think from an environmental perspective, we want the lights off.
Yeah, I just want to add, the safety is a paramount concern for us. I think, obviously there are liability issues associated with the gravel lot, with us taking responsibility for that. I think if there are any conditions that are warranted, or the commissioners believe are warranted regarding the lighting, I think that needs to be taken account of, and certainly we have standards that we as a company must uphold for safety and liability reasons.
So with that said, if the 10 o'clock, everybody's gone, lot's empty, nobody's out there, are you okay with the lights going off, but on motion sensor?
Don't we have some mechanisms where they?
Which one?
Town center has them on
Dim
motion.
down
They do.
a lot.
So these aren't stated in here as being on motions, they're on programming.
Right.
So, if there's no activity, they can go to a half.
Certainly. Again, it's a balance between the liability
Right.
issues and safety and
So
also
if they're
the
on
environmental.
motion, somebody goes out there, they're going to come on. But the town is used to seeing that area dark, and I think it ought to remain dark after 10 o'clock or
Understood.
something like that. And then you guys would put motions on these light towers to pick up anything out there. And if you have a television camera out there, then you see anything going on anyway.
Right.
But,
Well,
Without any light?
yeah, infrared.
Oh.
tagging you out.
I think it's important that there is some light out there at night, all night long, for liability and safety reasons. I think they could be programmed to dim substantially, but I don't think it's prudent for us to have no light out there at all. There needs to be some sort of dim pilot light sort of thing. And, we're responsible for the lot, and anything can happen in the lot. And it would fall on us. So I think we have to make sure that the lot is safe. But it certainly doesn't have to be as bright as it is while it's in use.
I think
Okay.
street lights.
So, all right, so then,
Peter,
what?
what if they, rather than using, the tall lights that you usually see in the parking lot, if they had some of the, what they call bollards?
Right.
Those low-level, about 3 feet tall lights, something like that, that could be on dimly at night, and then have the large lights on a motion detector that they'll go off.
I can't read that.
And is this something that we
cut sheet.
have to approve that part right now, or can there be a lighting plan put together
There's a
for us
lighting
to look
plan,
at?
it's in here, but it doesn't,
There's
they're
a-
not motion sensor lights, they are programmed.
Okay, well, I would
Right.
want motion sensor lights. I'm saying, can they
So
be, can that part of it be
So-
approved at a later time?
So there is a mitigation measure in the environmental impact report that's under aesthetics. It's aesthetics number 1, it says reduce nighttime lighting. Talks about night sky compliant lighting. It talks about use motion sensors shall be used where possible to lessen unnecessary lighting. Wherever possible, lighting for pathways shall be low power lighting, and use of separate circuits shall be implemented where feasible. So there is general discussion, but we do not go into the details. They have proposed lighting fixtures, and there's a cut sheet in your plan showing the larger fixtures and the number of those. And so the project has been evaluated based upon those light fixtures.
So I would just then put it before the other commissioners that those have motion sensors on them, and the
Yes.
adjustments of all of these can be done, and that they end up at 3,000 Kelvin. That would be my only.
Well, that should be in any way
I'm
the
supportive
3,000.
of motion sensors on all of them, and I understand from their perspective that you may want to keep every, fourth light on at all times at a low level. I mean, we do that in parking garages all the time.
Yep.
Which is, if it's not feasible, clearly the intent, our interest is to have as little light as possible, still addressing any safety issues. So motion sensors and whatever the very minimal amount of light is for
So
safety.
I would
you should
also-
have timers and motion
I would also
sensors.
just refer, the draft condition of approval number 15, which frankly we've used in the past and have included, which goes beyond sort of the EIR mitigation measures, but really talks about, specifying the exterior lights shown on the sheets. They should be connected to dimmers and timers. After installation, the applicant shall reduce the lighting levels up to the minimum required by code for public safety purposes if directed by
There you
staff. Timer shall be set to turn off exterior lights
Much
or
more
illuminated signs at 11 p.m. or at the close of business, whichever is earlier.
Okay.
Motion-activated lighting otherwise complying with the conditions of
mind.
approval may be
Got it.
applied.
You got
Sounds
it.
like it's covered.
All right, next question.
All right.
Fence
right.
around the parking lot.
If people want a fence around the parking lot, I want to be sure there's enough shrubbery on the parking lot side so we don't have to look at the fence.
Right, well, that's a valid comment.
Or it's an aesthetically pleasing fence,
Well, it's a black,
picket.
No.
Black or green?
No, it's gonna be.
No, it's got to
gonna
be
a-
one of those,
It's gonna be a chain link
A
fence. with
chain
the
link fence.
Plastic inserts in it.
no, not plastic
No.
inserts. it's
Cyclone.
That's what's
Yeah.
being proposed.
Black cyclone.
Or green.
and that's why I'm saying
Black
be
or-
sure
black or
that the
dark green.
plantings are in front of it, hide it from the parking lot
Is that
site.
to protect
I-
the birds? Is that the-
I don't.
Protect dogs and other folks from
I
actually
think
wandering.
the intention of, correct me if I'm wrong, experts, I think the intention of Audubon is to have, when you're standing next to your car, first you see the fence, then you see the natural vegetation. Because they want, Audubon and other folks want the critters to be able to interact with the natural vegetation and not have to go through the fence. I do not
Well,
believe.
it's
don't-
also to prevent it's a very good indication not for animals, dogs, and others to not venture into that area
Right,
as
but
well.
this is the question is, will the fence be screened by landscaping if you're standing in the middle of the parking lot?
No, right, no, right.
The answer is no, everybody? I think the answer is no to
Not
that.
on plan, no, right.
Do people go
Okay, so
into-
I
that's,
would prefer it the other way, but I could live with looking at the fence if I had to.
Currently, the way that the parking lot, the gravel lot to distinguish is that there's not sufficient room for additional landscaping either. That wasn't really contemplated with the fencing.
Oh, no, it is.
No, if you add the fence, that there wouldn't be additional landscaping on top of that.
You were going to have the fence instead of landscaping?
Maybe you could speak to the fence and the
There's
plan.
no
We don't have
landscaping on
a,
the front?
No, the
There's-
peripheral is just a natural buffer.
Cross-section would be helpful.
Put a vine on it?
Is it a problem now that a lot of people and dogs go from the gravel lot into the?
I don't think so,
Marsh
but
area?
Barbara has brought it up as a protectant.
But you also brought it up in 1995 and it didn't happen, so
Okay.
So do we need to make a decision on the fence
Yeah.
tonight? Okay.
We want to condition it with the fence.
My preference is to not go.
Okay.
It's, so with the fence, I mean, we'd like to have a plan. I would rather not describe this to you verbally. But there is a plan, there is an alternate plan with the fence as with it shown as an option. And the intent is the fence will not impact the existing brush area. There is a small area where there is a minimal impact, which of course I'd like to show a plan. But the intent is not to plant between, there's a small overhang, I think it's a foot to 2 feet between where the curb is and the fence, and we would not be planting in that area as of now. But again, that's a plan that we'd like to work, if that does become an option, if that does become an option that the planning commission is suggesting, yes, we can go back and look at that.
since this goes to the council from us, I would like us not to recommend having a fence. If the council members want a fence, let them do it. And I will remind people that this has come up before, since 1995, from the Audubon Society of putting up a fence, and it hasn't happened yet. And I don't particularly want to do it right now.
Okay, Bob?
One of the reasons for the fence that Audubon was asking for is because there was also a discussion of a path around the perimeter. And if that went in, they definitely wanted a fence. I would like to leave it as this would be an option to potentially put in later if there's a problem with people and dogs going into that buffer zone, so that it could be done, but wouldn't have to be done at this point.
Okay. Charles, do you have any thought about the fence perimeter?
No.
Okay. Jennifer?
I agree. I wouldn't recommend the fence at this time.
Okay. And I as well would stay off that decision until it's needed, and we can count the birds that are brought in by the dogs. So at this point, we could drill down into these findings. I personally feel as if the applicant has made a superb application and that they have addressed everything that we need to address. I don't know if that feeling is shared by the other commissioners.
I concur.
Right.
I agree.
Jennifer?
I agree.
Charles?
I'm in agreement.
All right, we've spent
Chair-
hours and hours reading these things.
Just a point of order
Yeah.
that prior to your deliberations and discussing your findings, you may want to close the public hearing.
Yes, correct. Thank you. So that said, do we have any members of the public that would like to make a further comment after hearing all of our nonsense here? So, no, I don't see anybody standing up. So we will then close the public hearing, and we will go back to saying what we want to say about approval of this wonderful project. So, if anybody has anything to add, let's do so now in terms of description or issues that you have for this project. Bob?
I have nothing to add.
Okay. Phyllis?
I am satisfied with the project. I am satisfied with the resolution.
All right. Jennifer?
No, I think the only thing I would add, because, and it wasn't brought up as much tonight, but I think there has been a lot of commentary and concern around parking, that I think that these guys will figure it out, whether it's through valet on an ongoing basis, or hopefully artificial intelligence will be parking our cars, self-parking here in the next couple of years if Elon Musk has his way. So I'm not overly concerned about the parking, and I think it's a really nice project. I think you guys have put a lot of thought into it, and really appreciate all of the hard work that all of you have put into it to get it to this point. So thank you.
Charles?
No, I'm good, thanks. I've asked plenty.
All right. Well, just to belabor Phyllis's comments about the various comments and so forth, I'm going to say that I think that the team has addressed so many of the public comments that are in the public realm in one way or another. The information is in the documents, it's there, it's available. I think it addresses many of the statements that have been made, and I think I don't need to poll everybody, but I think everybody feels that it's a beautiful building, it's a good project, and I think we should I will ask for a motion here.
I can make a motion. Do I read this entire thing? I can? Okay.
Yes, please.
I'm still awake and it's 10:40, so. I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 17-002.
022.
I'm sorry, 17-022. Resolution of the Planning Commission of the Town of Corte Madera recommending that the Town Council certify the final environmental impact report and approve applications for, 1, a general plan amendment to change the land use designation of the gravel lot from wetlands and marshlands to mixed-use regional serving commercial, and 2, rezoning of the gravel lot from parks, open space, and natural habitat to C2 regional shopping. The Baylands Risk Zone and Natural Habitat Overlay District will remain. And 3, preliminary plan amendment for retail expansion and improvements to the gravel lot. 4, precise plan amendment for retail expansion and improvements to the gravel lot. 5, design review application for retail expansion and improvements to the gravel lot. 6, conditional use permit for a cafe within the C2 regional shopping district zone. And 7, development agreement between the Town of Corte Madera and Macerich for APN 024-032-030 and APN 024-032-19.
Second.
Call the roll there.
Apologies. Commissioner Bundy?
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lee?
Yes.
Vice Chair Metcalf?
Aye.
And Chairman Chase?
Yes. Okay, now, you have to make a statement regarding appeal rights.
No, because
No?
we're
That's right.
recommending.
That's right.
It's a recommendation,
It's
so
all
it's going to the town council.
That's right.
regardless.
So I would just say, to follow up, that, this is sort of record time to process something like this at this dais. So thank you very much for doing such a thorough job, and it makes our job easier, and I think that the decision we made is easily come to with the information you've provided. So thank you very much. Everybody did an amazing job. It's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good luck.
How about do you want to discuss canceling this? Shall we just say we're going to do it? We're not going to meet the day after Christmas?
Yes.
We're not going to meet the day after Christmas.
Got that. We are going to have another, we are going to be ready for,
We'll give it a minute. I know you guys want to high five. We've got to continue, so.
Do you want me to just move for adjournment?
that's fine. But just so you know, we do, if we're not, obviously, we don't need the next meeting for this project. We do have another application. It will be an appeal of a planning staff approval. So just so you know, this doesn't mean we're canceling the next meeting.
Right.
The next one's on the 28th.
28th.
So there is a move to adjourn?
Move to adjourn, second.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.
Good night.